Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sunsail Bob. Well, how'd you like this afternoon's little live chat? Um, Here it is around 10 o'clock, and I've been thinking what to talk about. And I've decided I want to talk about what you want to talk about. I can talk forever, right? And I don't need to. So I'm just here for you. So I'll wait a while, see what happens. I'm just going to meditate here. Conscious intent I am. Conscious intent I am. And I'm here um, amongst people. Most of the summer I've been all by myself. So this afternoon's um, live chat was at one of my favorite haunts, and I had a friend visit, and we were talking, and I wanted you to capture the essence of one of my offices, and that restaurant bar Fud House is quite interesting because it's right on the edge between the poor white people and the poor black people. It's one place where it's like Archie Bunker meets Sanford and Son, and everyone gets along, and it's quite interesting. And it is a place that exemplifies that we can get along because it's not just black and white people, and not just poor people, but it has everybody else there too. And there is a Muslim and a Orthodox Jewish and a born again Christian um, community, all living within blocks of this restaurant, and they all hang out there, right? And they all leave their prejudices at the door, and everyone gets along. There's a card room, and there's a pool room, and just people come and talk and tell stories, and there's every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's a guy spinning records at 3 o'clock, 3 to 10 p.m. So there's dancing, and it's just the best of places. Anyway, I'm waiting for you guys to show up. So, because I'm ready to answer your questions. Last night was a very nice chat. Let's take a look at it. I'll read what the chat said. Uh, uh, uh. Anybody there yet? Here I am live. Ooh. uh, uh, well, there's Johnny. Hey, John, good to see you, buddy. So, did you try and meditate today? Today was Sunday. Did you do any praying? Did you give thanks for all that you have? It's a beautiful day. Did you go outside and walk around? Did you breathe that fresh air? Did you absorb that vitamin D from the sun? Because that's really the best way to get vitamin D. Eating loaves of bread doesn't really help with vitamin D. And if you were just going to eat spinach, you'd have to eat, hundreds of pounds, right? So, really, you have a lot to be thankful for, John. You're talented, you're smart, you have really good parents, they care for you, they help you out in every way they can. But it's your life, it's your life to decide, to move forward, to experience life, you know, being up there to school, and not even going outside. I mean, you have beautiful 10 acres, and I cut all of those paths to go hiking up in that hill. There's that nice circle that goes all the way around. You know, when's the last time you were on that? Let's see who's and in my gang. Print Eddie M. Eddie M. Who are you? Where are you from, Ed? And what do you do? Well, starving yourself isn't good, John. Everything in moderation. You know. A friend, California. Oh, what do you do in California, Ed? And what part of Northern California or uh, the middle path? Yep, the middle path is moderation in all things, right? You're a farmer. Oh, what do you grow, bud? And how many are you a animal farmer or vegetable farmer? You grow stock like grains, or are you a specialized farmer? Anyway, special farm. That's good. Back in the day, in the '80s, I helped take over 50 buildings and house 500 families in neighborhoods of New York City, Brownsville, South Bronx, Lower East Side, Brooklyn, where they redlined hundreds of blocks, and so there were no stores, no schools, no nothing. So the people, the homeless folk, and we mostly put homeless families, moms and kids, right, who were on the street, and hey, they're fish. You're a farmer of yourself. That's right. Medical farmer. Well, that's good. That can be profitable, and that helps people. I assume you're growing cannabis sativa, or you're growing things like echinacea and golden seal and medicinal herbs of that nature. Because all are good. The thing about cannabis sativa, it is the most, you know, unbelievable plant. I mean, food, fiber, fuel. The reason why um, uh, cannabis was made illegal is because people were turning it into fuels for their automobile, and Mr. Rockefeller didn't like that. It's the same reason why we had alcohol was illegal for 14 years. You know, because people were making alcohol and putting it in their automobiles and driving around, and Mr. Rockefeller didn't like that. Oh. John's message. Let's see. Let's show that message. Where can I make it? Oh, yes, I have to do this. Meaning, work in the pejorative means doing stuff you don't like to do. Um, when you work, like have a job, you know. But you can also, I mean, like for 50 years, I was a master electrician, and every day I enjoyed my work, my craft, I got paid well for it. I employed people, gave them a livelihood, taught them how to be electricians. And many of them went on to have their own businesses, and that brought me great joy, right? And I worked lots, When I worked, I worked. When I didn't work, I didn't work. Oh, oh, oh. And our lives are not about us. It's not all about us. We look at John. He started off. I'm here. Let's see. It looks like it doesn't show. Today was awful. Don't lecture me on my weight. I don't say anything about your weight, John. You're the one who brought it up. Uh, I starve myself all day. We're not meant to starve ourselves. All we have to do is eat in moderation. And the best time, when you wake up, if you can put off eating as long as you can, that's a good thing. So I got up around, I don't know, 8 o'clock, and I wrote and I read. And then I met a friend for brunch, and I had a nice omelet. And she took her a while to show up. So by the time she showed up, it was lunchtime. So I had a nice fish platter, and we shared it between us, right? There was 6 shrimp. It was a really nice bass that was fried, and a crab cake, right? And so I split everything, and a baked potato, and really great, yummy hush puppies, and split everything in half. And we finished eating that around 2 o'clock. I haven't had anything to eat since then, and I'll probably go to bed, an hour or two from now. And that's how you can keep your weight down, is not so much starving yourself, but being sensitive to what your body needs, right? And so doesn't need to be starved, and doesn't need to be punished. All it needs is substance, and you can eat almost anything you want, but just not in a great deal, right? And John, that wasn't a lecture on you. That was basically a statement of how I eat, not how you should eat. So, you know, again, nothing, our lives are not about us. It's about the we and me, right? Hello, Miss Dear Divine Fish. Let's see, that man. I don't use the word work either. Him is like the word God, right? I don't use the word God because if you take it all the way back through Sumerian, it means ball. The god was Baal. And God, Baal, the god that we call God, came from, off planet, was a reptile. And it basically created humanity as a science experiment, right? And that's all we are. We are not our bodies, you know? This little body here ain't going to heaven. And there is no heaven. Heaven and hell is right here on this little planet. And we're in a sandbox. And we are spirit, right? Our soul is just this body is just an avatar to experience this physical illusion, right? And this illusion is basically a simulation. You know, the guys who made the movie The Matrix pretty much got it right. But, nothing is right. It's just what it is, right? So I hate work. I go to a job and teach autistic children. It's the best job. Yeah, see, it's a job, not work, right? And she loves her job, right? And again, I have no idea what gender any of you guys are. I just, pretty much in my mind, it's like, hey, girls, everyone in the pool. Uh, Taken on too many different connotations. Exactly. That's an amazing field of work. Selfless service. Yes. And that's the most fun job is a selfless service to others. You know, hush puppies. Yes, my favorite type of forget white bread, forget any kind of hush puppies, cornmeal fried. Yum 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 yum. Even though I ate bread, I still ate only like 1,400 calories all day. I'm not lecturing you, John. Your life is yours. You do with it what you want. All I want for you, John, is for you to be happy. You're my friend. I want the best for you, right? And I've tried to, the 2 years that I was with you, more like 18 months, um, I was there as an example, you know, not not to lecture you on anything, right? And I want you to be the best you can be, and that's all we can be, is the best we can be. You don't have to be perfect. We don't have to do what any holy book, because none of the books are holy. They're written by man, not by God. The Bible was not written by God. You know, it was printed by McGraw Hill or some other printer. King James Bible. It's that King James was not God. He wrote that Bible to manipulate the public. You know. Oh, ba-doo-boo-boo. Hush puppies, yes. Maybe get a automatic feeder for the cat. John, I suggested that you just let your parents take care of your two cats for a while. I think they would be fine with that. And why have you asked your parents if they would take care of your pet? Let's see, divine person. We love you, but girl, breathe. It's all okay as long as your life isn't failing into a worst case scenario. You're okay. And my people always talk shit. It's okay. Well said, Fish. Yeah. See, John, everyone cares about you, you know, but you're the decider. You have to figure out what to do with your life. None of us are lecturing you, you know. free will, or determination? Do we choose the things we accomplish in life, or are accomplishments something that occur naturally as a byproduct of the flow of life? Both, right? We are in the flow, and how well we kind of surf that flow is pretty much how well we do with life and all the decisions we make. And pretty much, if we, I've been talking about, conscious intent, I am, conscious intent, I am, conscious awareness, I am. So if you're aware and you have intent on what you want to do, that's free will, and that's conscious free will. Most people don't experience that whatsoever. Now, a lot of people go with the flow. They just kind of flow with it, and that's a good thing. But it's a better thing if you can flow with the flow and be conscious of it, because then you can serve love's co-creation consciously, right? So, Fish, you're right on both angles there. So that's all you got to do. And when you kvetch and are anxious about everything, it only is because you're narcissistic. It's only because you're neurotic. It's only because it's, I'm thinking about me all the time. It's all about me. It's all about me. It's all about me. It's all about. No, it's not all about you. It's the we in me. And that's what's the fun in life is when you do things with other people with their happiness in mind, not yours. I need to get a blowjob. I need to get a blowjob. Oh, that pussy is too hairy. It smells. Oh no, sorry, buddy. That's not how it works. No. If that's all you can think of, then you're missing the point, right? And you know, there's a real difference between sex and eros, right? Sex is just a representation of a biological determination of reproduction. Eros is when you care for someone, where you're ready to sacrifice anything for the other's self being, right? And betterness. And you don't even, I mean, I've had, when I was in grammar school, I was telling this story last night. I went to a very interesting grammar school. It had been, the school district had been a very rural one. And then all of a sudden, all these rich people kind of moved into the farms and built big houses. And so the public school kind of changed. And instead of having like the little red schoolhouse all over the county, they took the big high school and turned it into grammar school, and then they built a brand new middle school and a brand new high school. And they spent a lot of effort on making a really good curriculum and having really good teachers. And I showed up in third grade, and a lot of the students, about half the kids in the grammar school, there were about 800 kids in the grammar school, and that was for the whole county. And most of them had been from other grammar schools that were small, that had like maybe 50, 60, 100 kids in the grammar school. And they put them all in this, what had been the high school. And so when I got there, I was definitely the new kid. I mean, I came from New York City, and I'm out there in the country. And, so there were all these other grammar schools that ended up in this one grammar school. So there were all these cliques of kids who went from other grammar schools. And there were about, let's see, 6 guys and 4 girls who were like me, meaning we had shown up in that school district and we hadn't come from any other grammar school. So we didn't know any of those other kids. So, nobody wanted us to sit at their table. And so there was Maddie Law, who was black. There was J.P. Hoagland, who always wore a suit. He was like James Bond because he had always had a gun. His family, his great grandfather, started the NRA, and his whole family were about guns. Right? When I went over to his house the first time, I went in, and his mom looked like Donna Reed, but she had a bandolera, and she had 2 pearl-handled 45s, and she was making cookies. You boys want some? She was like everyone in their family had a gun. the people knew more about guns, gun safety. They taught me how to, shoot a gun. And, up until I got blind, I was still a pretty good shot. And I would always freak people out because these people be having guns. And, I live out in the where everyone has guns and shooting guns. And I don't like the sound and I don't like the smell. But I was with, goes back at least 15 years ago. I was with these guys. We were out in the woods. And, I was just trying to be neighborly with these guys. And anyway, they're all shooting their guns. And I didn't have a gun. And they said, Al, you know how to shoot a gun? I said, yep. And so they were shooting targets, right? And so, they had rifles, they had 30-06, and they had, you know, basically 9mm automatics. And so this guy says, here's my 9mm, And so bang, 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 I had a nice pattern in the thing. Then I took the rifle, and I was, because of the long barrel, I was even better. And they were like, they couldn't believe how well I could shoot. They said, but you don't have a gun, and you don't shoot ever. How do you can? I said, well, I learned how to do this, and I don't need I don't need a gun. I know how to use a gun, and I know that guns, statistically, if you own a gun, you're at a 50-50 chance of dying from your own gun. Either you eat it or someone takes it away from you and shoots you, right? So anyway, my crew was these 6 guys. So Maddie, Vincent Tupou, we had the 2 Vincents, Vincent Salvatore, Buzzy, and me. And who am I thinking? Oh, yes. What was his name? This is the Gottlieb family. Alan Gottlieb. And his dad was like super duper, worked for Raytheon. He was Mr. Computer. And this is early 60s. Late 50s, early 60s. And and there was 3 girls. Kim Romano, Lisa Stiles, and Debbie Soul. There was one more girl who was like, she had gone to another, she could have been part of somebody else's clique, but they didn't like her because she was different. She was really different. She always wore black. And in 3rd grade, she had like black eyeliner. She was a, what do you call those people who dress up that way? Goth. She was goth in 1962, So, and Debbie Soul, her father was the bookie in town, and she was like the Italian god. All the women, all the girls in our club were goddesses, right? And Kim Romano's father was like a truck driver, and she was blonde, blue eyes. She was like a movie star goddess, but she had 4 brothers, and to just survive, she knew how to beat the crap out of anybody. And so, like, whenever we got bullied, Kim would beat the crap out of the bully. She would just walk straight up to him. He would not expect, a girl, and she would just whang, break his nose. I saw her in 5th grade. Vincent Salvatore was a real little kid, and the bullies picked on him mercilessly. And she was the first person I ever saw headbutt a guy and break his nose. Right? We were in cafeteria, and she, picked this guy up by his shirt and just bang, and broke his nose. And so she was, she took care of us, right? So we were an amazing crew. So we didn't hang with any of those guys. We would get a ball and go out and play kickball ourselves, where we played soccer and with ourselves. We invented a game where we took a piece of chalk and made a rectangle and then cut it up into 10 squares, and we had a handball, and we'd be right next to each other, and we would knock the ball into each other's little square, And, if you missed it or couldn't hit it into somebody else's square, so we invented our own games and we went out, we had our own fort, and we had the greatest of times. And once we hit seventh grade and our hormones, and we were taught all about sex, and we decided that we would have sex, with each other. And what was truly, we were a crew of 10 folk who were totally polyamorous. We loved each other. I mean, those guys, I loved all those guys. And I loved the girls. And we were like a family. And we loved each other, and we all had dysfunctional families. And so we were the most functional family. We made it ourselves. We decided to have our own family and that, we would care for each other and we would watch each other's backs and we would praise the positive sides to our lives. And even though we pretty much all had, like I said, dysfunctional families and could go boo hoo hoo, and you know, bottom line, by the time we were in fifth grade, after fifth grade was over, no, the bullies did not bully us because we all kind of grew up and were more mature than any of those. And we had this clique of friends, and we didn't need the approval of the rest of those 800 kids, right? And we all turned out a lot better than, by the time we hit seventh and eighth grade, we were the popular ones, but we were our own little cadre. We were the smart ones. We were the ones who were football stars and scholastic stars. And because we, instead of competing amongst ourselves, we studied together. So we always did well in school, you know, because all of us had good and strengths and weaknesses, and we would support each other. And that school system kind of enabled us to do that. We had really great teachers who, when by the time we hit fifth grade, we had some really great teachers who saw what we were doing and really supported us. I mean, really went out of their way to give us access to all the resources we needed to get better and better. And I had this one teacher, Mr. Morales, who was a great mathematician, and I really loved geometry. And he was amazed by how I could do proofs. And so he said, you have mastered geometry, you know, and you can master anything else in math by just taking the skill set you had in math, in geometry, and put it towards algebra. So in fifth grade, he was teaching me algebra and trigonometry, right? And he then was a musician. He wasn't my music teacher, but he was a musician. And he was the one who really helped me understand rhythm, right? Not my music teacher, because he was a little anal retentive, So and I basically I played saxophone, and Mr. Morales had like a jazz band. So all of us who couldn't stand being in the orchestra or the marching band, we were in Mr. Morales's jazz band, and that's why I learned how to love jazz music and classical music and every other kind of music. He said there's good music and bad music. It doesn't, it's not stuck to any type, you know. So I had an amazing public school education. I really, it built upon my education that I had from the Marinols, in first and second grade, and I, was I stayed because I was basically murdered by a Nazi nun, and my esophagus got crushed, and my jaw got broken, and my left orbit got crushed. And instead of really, oh, no, I mean, by what she did to my eye, it enabled me to see other things, right? What she did to my jaw, I couldn't speak for 2 years. And then when I could speak, I had a serious stutter. And I had this Marinol who taught me how to speak, right? And basically, he was not only a linguist and not only a speech therapist, but he was really into theater. And he said, what you do is all through your life, you visualize the character you want to be and you act that character. Don't let anyone else make you um, what you're not, right? So, Damon, free will or determination. Okay, so lame-ho. Yep. Good points. Okay. Show us some pics of you when you were younger sometime. Okay. I'll do my best. But I've been on the bop for the last 15 years, so I have half of my whatever pictures and personal stuff I left at the school, and John has gone through it and kept and he's shown it on he showed my pictures. The only pictures I had of my grandparents, John has, and he showed it on his YouTube, and he showed their wedding thing, and he kind of said, "Oh, this is my," So that's how I've lost a good deal of my memorabilia, and because I had to leave, I had so much stuff. The school before I sold to John was mostly my warehouse. So it's not really John's fault. I left it there. And he'd be like, I own it now. I own this property. I own your stuff. Right. So and it was a good thing because it allowed me to let go of things. And that's a really important thing. Right. So I have nothing. Now I still have stuff. I still have some photos, but a lot of that memorabilia is going by the wayside. And I'm sure I have some pictures of me when I was a little peanut. Um, but it was interesting. My dad, being the Air Force colonel he was, had his own personal photographer. So he really loved getting his picture taken. And I really got into photography because when I was 9, my dad, you know, he went to civilian life and he took a lot of pictures. But when I was 9, he handed me his Hasselblad great camera, and he said, "Okay, it's time for you to take pictures." So I became his photographer. So that's where I first started taking pictures. So I don't have too many. Nobody. I was the youngest, and they have a zillion pictures of my older sister. I have a zillion pictures of my brother and my other brother, my other sister, and my other sister, and the two who died. Not too many of me. Because when I was little, my grandma took care of me. She didn't take any pictures of me. And so I don't have that many pictures. I might have a few. So I'll dig around and see what I can find. But I'm on the bop right now. I'm not going to get back to the deep green until March. And I didn't really bring any photos with me because I'm letting go of all of that. My friend, I was, talking to her, and I, had her look things up on the internet where you can find me. And but I, never wanted to be an A-list. I never wanted to be famous because I was kind of infamous. So there's tons of images and stories of me on the internet and all over the place, but you can't find it by my name. You have to look up the things I was doing with the people I was doing with, and there I am in the picture, right? And so, I much rather the history of me uh, be remembered that way by, there's tons of books written about the stuff that we did. And I took all the pictures. Most of the pictures in those books that I gave to my friends who wrote those books, have my pictures in them. And not too many of them have pictures of me, but everybody else. But, the stories are about us, and I'm in there, and, where it gives credit for the photos and my name. And so, and and I told someone this the other day, I don't care to be famous, but, I know a lot of people, and a lot of people who, I don't want to say, well, I will say they're powerful, right? They're in positions. And if I have any kind of I don't even know what to call it, drive or appreciation, any of that kind. I like access to information. That's it. So I know people, and I've done things for people who control that kind of access. And I, worked for lots of different people and lots of different, especially in my scholarly days. And so all those people know me. And like I was at a place uh, the other day, and I was having lunch with someone, and all these, important people kept coming up. Al, I haven't seen you forever. Blah blah. We'll have to have lunch, and they would ask me a question. I'd give them a little, oh, let me think about it, or I'll talk to you later. And my friend was floored, couldn't believe that I knew all these people and that they would come out of their way just to say, "How you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. Was worrying about you." And that's what is friendship. That's what community is. That's what neighborly is. And when you lock yourself up and are scared to have a life, that's truly sad. Let's see, what else is Mr. Dateman saying? Free will. Okay, we got that. Lame-o. Good points. Show us. Okay. Yes. Do you mind sharing a few? No, like I said, I'm on the bop, so I'm like, couch surfing. Like, here's the couch I'm staying on right here. And this is my friend's farm, and I'll be here, for a month. But I didn't bring I just brought clothes and vitamins and, my little medical bag to take care of my medical. Because when I travel away from the lodge, I don't have my support system, right? So, and I'm a pretty sick guy, but because I live a life of moderation, um, all of my doctors are always amazed that I'm still alive. My endocrinologist, he has the same stupid joke he always says, "You're the healthiest dead guy I know," because, I have diabetes, aplastic anemia, charcoal legs, neuropathy, about 20 other things. And I keep them and I don't have the money, or, I'm moving around right now, so I can't get my prescription drugs. So I have to be very disciplined about my diet, my blood sugar, and I have to be very disciplined about, the different things that affect the other things about my health, and being disciplined and conscious intent is what you know um, can keep you in good health. It's called homeostasis. So that's what I do. And if that was practiced in America, we spend more money on healthcare than the rest of the world combined, and we're number 48. Cuba is 20 countries above us, meaning, and people getting sick, people dying per capita, blah blah blah. We have the worst, right? Look at how we are the worst. We More people have died of COVID than any place else. Half the world's death rate comes from America because of our unbelievably bad medical system. I lived in Ireland, and I once had an impacted tooth, and I was in a little town, and walking down, my head was like out here, and I knew the dentist. He had a little tooth out in front of his office, and I went in there, and there were people waiting, and the doctor was talking to his nurse, and he saw me. He goes, "Whoa!" He said, "Come with me." He took me in. Had the nurse take an X-ray, had me in the seat, and he said, "We have to take care of this right now." I said, "But whatever, doctor, wait, sir, what?" He said, "No, no, no." He says, "What are you doing today?" "No, worries." So he kind of shot me up with Novocaine so it wouldn't be throbbing in my head, and he stuck the nitrous oxide nose cone on me and turned it up and said, "Okay, just sit in the seat and entertain yourself, and I will come in and take care of you in between my other patients." And he did. First he came in and he said, "Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to chop that tooth off, and we're going to do a root canal, and then we're going to put a bridge there." So he did it, right? And relieved the pressure, the infection. He gave me, gave me a drip of antibiotics, And I was there all day. And by the time I left, I had a new tooth, and my toothache was gone, and my head didn't look like a basketball anymore. And he gave me the antibiotics I needed and some painkillers. And I shake his hand, say thank you, and then I go to the girl. So what do I owe you? She goes, nothing. I said, what? She goes, we have free health care in Ireland. I said, but I'm not Irish. And she goes, but you're here in Ireland, and to try and charge you, we don't even have the paperwork for it. So, and I said, well, thank you very much. And I also broke a finger and a toe in Ireland, and they took care of both of those. And this is when Ireland was a poor country back in the 70s. And, you know, I also got sepsis once in Sweden, and they took care of that. Not a penny was, and so why can't we? We have spent. Listen to this. We have spent $70 trillion, the military in the United States between 2013 and 2018. 70 trillion. And they say, oh, we can't afford single payer health care. Oh, we can't afford that. And that would just be in the billions. Anyway, let's see what you're saying here. Let's see. Yes. Do you mind sharing a few? No, like I said, probably, my car is like the magic car. I'll dig down in the floorboards and see if I got any photos stuck anywhere. And if I do, I'll show them to you. But otherwise, not until March, because I'm not getting back to the deep green, because I'm hanging out here, and John wants me to go to school, but I'm actually don't feel safe going up there. My car, the road going up to the school is really a mess, and my car. Someone put down $2,000 to fix my car, and now my car is 80% better than it was, but it still has issues. Still rattles. The wheels feel like they're about to fall off. So I really don't like going on really, the road up to the school is like driving up a riverbed. And I'm to go up there and then be thrown out again without any real idea where I'm going to go, So John is my friend, you know. What the heck is that? Anyway, so, you know, and, I asked John if he could come down from the school and meet me for lunch. He started screaming, why would I want to do that? There's no place in Roanoke that I can make a living making movies. There's nobody. Well, Roanoke, he says, there's no artists there. There's no creative. Well, that's not true. Roanoke has some of the largest group of musicians and visual artists, and I'm part of that community, and I have been for the last 20 years. And he does not want to interact with folk. We went to an art show once, and he got what is it when you kind of can't remember what you did that night because you get so drunk? What is it, blackout? Or anyway, I had to take care of him. I had to drive him back, and John is, people would say, well, this boy's got real problems. Yes, he is neurotic, and he is self-absorbed, and those aren't really. I mean, the way you get over that is to realize that your life isn't about you. That it's about everybody around you. You're there to make all the people you interact with happy. And that's what I do in every day in every way. And that's what makes me happy. And so I had brunch with this friend of mine, my new friend, and she's really smart, and she's really, you know, and she's from Africa, and she knows like 5 languages, and she's got more degrees than a thermometer. And because she is so honest and so pure, um, she's worked for a number of nonprofits, Goodwill, and she was hired by Goodwill to be a diversity, work on diversity, and she was doing such a good job, they fired her because all they really wanted was somebody they could point to. See, we got a diversity person there, and they fired her because she was actually doing her job. Imagine that. And now she's, teaching in college, and she likes that, and she's enjoying that. And she may not do that forever, but anyway, so we enjoy each other's company, and um, I had her come to this place that's like, Archie Bunker and Sanford and Son, and she was just blown away because uh, there are all these people I know there, and I've known them forever, and they were like coming up and greeting me, and a lot of people, you know, just came up to me. I hear you. Can you read my palm? All right, so I read about four people's palm while she was sitting there, and I don't do just like a parlor trick. I go straight into. I can see their energetic self. I can see what their issues are, their problems, and I went straight to them, and said this, and this, and they were like, right, and I helped them see how to get over it, and they started to cry. Everyone cried, right, and my friend was like, I can't believe this. So it was a very nice day. So everyone was happy, and we just enjoyed ourselves, and that's what life's about: helping others, making other people happy. That's what makes me happy. That's what makes all of you on the chat here. I mean, I can see you all energetically, and you're all in your communities working in every day and every way take the peace of the earth. Are you still homeless? Well, we're all homeless basically, but I'm on the bob. That's what I call it. I'm visiting people's couches. Now I live out in the forest, and that's my home, but the winter's a bit harsh. It's I'm an old guy, got a lot of things wrong with me. It's not really wise for me to live 30 miles to the closest anything, and that there's no cell signal out there. And if I were to slip and hurt myself, that would be it. They'd find me being eaten. Now, I spent all last winter there, and, it was interesting. It was cold, but I didn't want to do that again. So, you know, when my friend asked me to come and take care of her farm for a month, yeah, that was good. And John's, oh, please stay at school. Please stay at school. Oh, please, please, please. I'd love to go up there and be with John and do videos and all of that, but you kind of saw where he's at in this chat, you know, and it would be difficult because my experience is that he's thrown me out 32 times. Now, every time he's thrown me out, I've had a unbelievably great adventure, right? He threw me out, and I went up to West Virginia to be with some friends, and that town pretty much got washed away, and I couldn't find any of them. But I found these kids who were super middle class, upper middle class, had graduated college, and they expected graduating college they would get their perfect job, but they didn't spend any time. During the years, those 4 years of going to college during the summer, instead of you know trying to become an apprentice of their job and volunteering for this or that to make connections, they didn't. And so when they graduated, um, there were no jobs for them, even though they went to a really good college. And so they decided to have an adventure. So they all decided that they would hike the Appalachian Trail. But none of them ever hiked before. And they were like, you know, hiking in high heels and dresses. And, so I stopped at this diner right off of 66, right on the border of Virginia and West Virginia, and I went in there and had breakfast. And as I was walking in, this girl was spare changing, but she had really expensive clothes. And I couldn't understand how someone who was wearing $300 worth of clothes could be spare changing. And I said, come on, girl, you are not a homeless person. You are not from a poor family. What are you doing? She goes, well, I'm on an adventure. We ran out of money. And I said, you don't have a credit card? I said, well, I left them at home. I said, What? She said, oh, yeah, I just didn't pack them. And I didn't really pack. And I didn't think the AT would be. And we got stuck up there. And then the weather changed. And we're living out in the forest. I said, really? I got to see this. I said, so I got a lot of canned food in my car. Let's go find your friend. So I did. And I found these six kids out there. And they found like a log cabin out in a national forest. And it was obvious that the teenagers around this was a party house. The whole floor was covered in, candy wrappers and beer cans, and yet it was a log cabin, and the niching, the stuff between the logs had kind of fallen out, so the wind is blowing through, and it had a big fireplace, and it had this arm with a big cast iron pot on it, had a wood stove, right, and had a big cast iron frying pan on the wood stove. I mean, this place, you could live in this thing relatively. Had a nice couch, a couple chairs, a table, but it was freezing cold in there. And I said, we're going to start a fire. And this guy goes, well, we have to go to Lowe's and buy some firewood. I said, no, no, you're in the middle of a forest. We'll go out to the forest, and we'll look on we'll get the wood off the forest floor. So he starts looking on the floor in the cabin. There's no logs here on the. I said, no, the forest floor. These kids were so detached, so separated, so into themselves. They had no clue. So everyone out. Let's go. And it was a sunny day. The wind wasn't blowing. It hadn't snowed yet. It was pretty cold, but it hadn't snowed yet. So all the wood was still dry. So I said, okay, see all this wood? This is the forest floor, and I was still with canes, and I was, they almost expected for me to do everything, and they wouldn't do anything. You know, it's like I showed John. He's got two amazing wood stoves in that school, and he still hasn't. I don't know if he's learned how to. But before, last when I left after 2 winters there, um, he did not know how. I showed him many, many, many times how to start a fire in a wood stove, and I still don't know if he can do that. Anyway, so these kids were on that same level. They were on the same kind of level as John. They never learned how to take care of themselves. And so, but they didn't complain like John. So they weren't that nihilistic, and so. Um, I showed them how. Let's drag all this wood in here, and we break up the twigs and the big lime. They had this, the big fireplace was above the wooden floor by about the stone, and it was big, big. The stone fireplace took up half of that whole wall, but the stone in front of the fireplace went from one end of the cabin to the other. So, meant to, store logs and firewood there, right? And so they could dry on. So anyway, I showed him how, okay, you take this, log that's like 12 feet long, you put it here, and you jump up here and it'll snap it, right? It can only be that big. Anything bigger, we're going to have to, we'll just stick it in the fireplace and burn it and just keep pushing it in. So we started up a fire there in the fireplace, and um, we went out and got, it actually had a pump well, right? So it actually worked too. So we kind of did that, and I primed it, and we did it some more, and then the water started coming out. So it had water and a fireplace and a wood stove. So we got the fire going. We put water in the big uh, cast iron pot, and kind of had this big arm that went and put it under the fire. So we started boiling water, and then we broke up the wood and put it in the um, wood stove, and started a fire there, and it was toasty, right? And then I said, okay, see all these wrappers, we're going to throw them in the fire. No, no, we'd be breathing plastic. No, we're going to use it for something better. We're going to stick it between the logs so the wind doesn't blow through, right? So I did that. And so I went out in the car, and we brought in a whole bunch of cans, and, um, you know, we took that hot water and put it in the frying pan, and the frying pan was pretty cruddy. We kind of scraped that all out, And I think these are the first dishes, these guys had ever washed. They had never done anything they never cooked for themselves. They never cleaned anything for themselves. Mommy did everything, or the maid did everything. And anyway, so they did that. And we, um, you know, uh, cooked a nice meal of canned food. I went out into the woods and picked up, some things to, you know, um, flavor the food. And I showed them how to do that. And so I had a nice little, sleeping bag to throw on the floor, and I slept on the floor. And none of those guys, this one guy slept on the couch and fell asleep. I'm the oldest guy by like, 50 years, and they basically no one offered. Oh, the old guy should sleep on the couch. No. Anyway, so I shared all my food with him, and I still had many cans in the car. So morning wakes up, I go and make some coffee. Actually have a coffee pot with me in the car, put the water in there, and make coffee. And I had no eggs, but we made more canned vegetables. We took the food from last night, and I turned it into a hash. And anyway, so the next, I said, okay, we need to go get more firewood. So we went and got more firewood, and I noticed so our circle of getting wood got larger and larger, and we were dragging more of it into the. They had a nice. It was one of those places. Um, in the front and back had a porch, and they were both had roofs over them, so you could stack wood on the porch, and it could dry out. And if it rained, it wouldn't get wet. So we're filling up the porch. We're filling up the log cabin with firewood, and making some more food. And I go out there. Like I said, our circle is getting larger and larger because we're eating up the wood. Because it's really cold. It's like 20 degrees. John threw me out at night, and it was like 10 degrees, and I can't see at night. And he said, "Come out!" So I rode down the hill to a place I could park and wait till the sun came up, and then I headed up 81 to get to 66 and go into West Virginia. And because I was going to this little coal town that I knew that I helped out a few years before. And anyway, so I'm out there in the woods, and we're collecting wood, and it's a beautiful day, and I have this kind of folding chair in my car. So I just go out in the woods and sit in my folding chair and say, "See that? Go collect that wood over there. Collect that wood over there." I'm looking at, and I'm seeing in the corner of my eye, somebody is like, just right over there, but they're not coming out and say, "Hey, how you doing?" They're like kind of hiding, and they're pretty good because these kids aren't noticing them all. My little, peripheral vision in my magic eye is catching their energy. Anyway, so I just kind of get up and kind of move around and go in the opposite direction, but parallel to where these guys are, and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And they kind of jump up, and they're in military gear, and all of these guys have come from Iraq and Afghanistan, right? And I said, "So I noticed you guys. So why don't you come out?" So, well, we don't want to. You're in the. I said, "It's cold out there. You should come in and get warmed up in the cabin." And I said, "Listen, you guys know how to survive. These kids don't. Look at them. They're wearing high heels in the forest. No, it's like, come on. They need you, and you need them." So took them in there, and we're making another meal, and a cell phone rings, right? And one of these rich kids has their iPhone, and it's her aunt, and she goes, "Yes, yes, yes, yes," and I'm hearing, not on speakerphone, but I hear it through the phone against this girl's head that the aunt is really upset with this girl because she hasn't called her. She has a phone that works. Her parents are paying the phone bill, and so the parents know kind of where she is because it's pinging off of towers, so they know she's alive, but she hasn't called them, right? Anyway, the aunt says, "Listen, your mother sent me $1,000 to make you come. And, I'm in West Virginia. Can you come to this town?" And the girl looks at me. She says, "Can you drive me to my aunt's house?" I said, "Sure." Yeah. So by this time, the army guys have, it's like they now have a mission to protect and help these kids, um, get to where they're going to go. So, because the story that the guy is that they all were unbelievably decorated. They all were, um, you know, deployed 5, 6 times, and they just broke. And they, their stupid lieutenant who hadn't been in country at all said, "Okay, we're going to go over here and do this." And they said, "Sir, if we do that, we'll all die." And so every one of them had disobeyed the lieutenant, so they wouldn't all die. And they all weren't from the same platoon. Were from, but they were all summarily dishonorably discharged. So they had no access to health care. They had no access to going to college, and they had been. I mean, when we were inside the thing, and they took their their flak jackets and stuff off because I got that cabin pretty toasty. They had scars all over them. They had tons, and this guy pulled out a pocket of Purple Hearts and Silver Stars. He had been unbelievably decorated, and they still gave him a dishonorably discharge. That's our government. And so I said, "You guys," and I gave them this little speech to the rich kids and the soldiers. I said, "You guys need each other. You work together, you'll both get out of this being way better. And so then I, took the girl off to her aunt's, and her aunt not only gave her $1,000 in cash, but gave her a car, right? And so we, the two cars, we went to a supermarket, and she bought a bunch of food, and we're on, the checkout line, and I feel this person like pawing my arm. I look over, and it's this woman somewhere around 40 to 55, right? And she's wearing this coat that makes her look like the Michelin lady. And she goes, "Are you a manly man?" I go, "I don't know about how manly we are, but I'm a man." She goes, "Are you a fix-it man? I have this big house, and I need, the heat doesn't work, and it's getting cold, and no one will come and do anything. Are you a manly man that can fix things?" I'm thinking, And she goes, "It's a big house. You can stay in your own room, and it has its own jacuzzi, and we have an indoor swimming pool." And I said, "Okay, sounds like I'll go there." And I went, and I don't know if you guys had ever seen the movie Old Ladies and Lace, or old Lace and Arsenic, or something like that. It was this woman and her mother and their little snotty dog, and this guy who was their uncle, who was like crazy. I mean, he was crazy. John isn't crazy, just a little neurotic, but this guy was. Anyway, so I stayed there for about a month and a half because it was super cold. This is when the Arctic vortex came down. It was like 60 degrees below zero. And so anyway, I was there, and it was like up on the edge of, DC is right over there, kind of Lynchburg is over there. I forgot the name of the town that was in Belize, but it starts with an S. Woodrow Wilson came from there, and West Virginia was over there, and Morgantown was over there. Anyway, so I was out in the middle of nowhere with these old ladies and this crazy guy, and fixing their everything, right? And the lady who said, "Are you a manly man?" She kept twice. I found her in my bed, kind of pawing my body. She wanted servicing. I said, "Oh yeah." She goes, "I really like you. Really." I said, "Well, you're kind of interesting," and she was, but just a little needy. And I said, "But I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy. It takes me a lot to get to. I got to really get to know people before I get intimate." She goes, "Well, that's good." And I said, "Listen, so." How long you been in this house? Oh, about 2 years. We bought it 2 years ago, and I have never left. I go to the supermarket every now and then. And I get everything delivered from Amazon. Anyway, and she had more stuff than unbelievable, right? So I said, listen, I have a friend of mine who's, I'm an artist from New York, and I have a friend who's having a show. And wouldn't you like to go to New York and stay in a real fancy hotel and go to the Whitney Annual? Here, let's look it up on the internet. See, this is the Whitney Annual, and I know all these people, and you'll have an amazing time, and we'll go dancing. And, if you want to be intimate with me, we have to do some stuff like that. She goes, oh, that sounds like a dream. And so I called up all my friends, and, she had booked things, and we were going to, uh, drive to where the Amtrak train was and take that to New York, and that would be part of the adventure. And as the day grew close, she chickened out. So I said, well, that shows that you're not really ready to have a relationship. If you don't really want to share that kind of experience, I mean, what? I don't just want to stay in your house and service you. So anyway, about 2 or 3 weeks after that, she goes, okay, it's time for you to go. If you're not going to, service me, you fixed everything that I needed fixes, and the heating's working and everything's working. So you can go, and that was a transactional relationship, Because then she said, oh, it's costing me money. I said, well, it'll cost you a lot more money to have all this stuff fixed. I was chopping your wood. I was keeping your fire going. I was keeping your house warm. And it was getting close towards the end of March. And I had to go anyway to go get my car to go back to the lodge, right? So I basically, left there and went to the lodge and tagged my car. And by that time, John had filled my phone up with like, and the thing about messaging and my phone service basically puts my voicemail up in the cloud and my messaging up in the cloud. So it's virtually, I can, a zillion messages. So I have virtually all of the messages John has ever sent me. And I thought it would be good for historical reasons, right? Because some of them are just off the friggin' hook. I mean, you can, just go scoot up to the beginning where John was the first person here and put everything there. And, and like I said, John's my friend. I only want the best for him, right? But on the other side of the coin, I am, a social scientist, and John really does reference as the social canary in the coal mine. Our social structure it's not falling apart. It never was any good. Make America great again. It was never great, right? And cancel culture. They don't want to study history. They don't want to know what America really was. Since Christopher Columbus, um, Anglo Europeans have killed 600 million indigenous people. And that's not just in the United States, but Canada, United States, Mexico, Central America, South America, 600 million indigenous people, right? And, they don't want to really look at that. And then you add in how many slaves have been here. And I mean, nobody wants to look at the picture, not nobody, but, and then the folks who are on the other side, they take it totally, meaning we have to find a common ground, you know. So John is just amazing. Um, you just have to look at John and see what's going on in America. So I love John. He's my friend. I want the, I spent 2 years, you know, and again, I don't do anything, I don't want to. So he threw me out 32 times, and that one little, adventure that was just one of the 32. I had 32 other ones I mean, 30 one other adventures that were just as amazing. I would not have had them if John hadn't thrown me out. And listening to John, just go back and read what he said in 20 or so captions, and you will see that that's what you'd have to live with morning, night, and he would break into my bedroom, and at 3 in the morning, and scream at me because of I did something like one time he thought, "You're trying to kill me." I had this blender. I was trying to make him smoothies, so he wouldn't just eat all this crappy food. And I was, blending vegetables and I had an old blender. And I don't know if you've ever had really old appliances with motors, but how a motor works, they have these little brushes and they have an armature that has a coil of wire and it goes in many different directions and the current goes through it. And the reason why the motor turns is that if it was just one coil of wire, when you ran current through it, the blender would turn like 180 degrees and stop. But because the coils kind of crisscross each other, it makes the motor turn. And so there's carbon brushes that bring the current to the motor, to the armature, and you turn on the current, and so it's running current through those carbon brushes. And if you use it for a real long time, it wears the carbon into a ridge, and you smell the ozone from the current going onto the armature, and it has a kind of interesting smell. Anyway, he had walked out of the kitchen, and there was a hole, it was just a door, and he said that I blew that smell of the motor at him, and it made him sick. Right? I mean, and this is that is really self-absorbed, and so he would blame me for things like that, and he never gave me any, appreciation for anything. Every meal I probably made him 1,000 meals, and every one he first said, "Do you spit in this?" And then he would eat. "Wow, this is great! This is the best food I ever had." But every meal was like the first meal. "Oh, did you spit in this?" And again, I'm not dissing John. This is John, right? And I appreciated this because it was a great learning experience, and I sharpened the blade of my patience and humility, because the only way I could, be able to do that for 18 months was to be patient and to be humble, right? And still, he threw me out 32 times, and still he threatened me and screamed at me and jumped up and down. But it was, again, a learning experience how to deal with that dynamic. And his dynamic, again, just read what he said in this chat, and you will get a good picture and realize that he is a reflection of the neuroses of our culture. So John is a very sensitive guy. And so that is why he represents this way, because he is just reflecting. He is not, he can't be the decider. He can't make up his mind. He's just, and there is, I mean, read, I starved myself and I worked out, like that means, no, I exercise every day. I don't kill myself. I can't, I'm an old guy. And so, but I do enough exercise to keep me healthy. That's all, and what that means is I walk around a lot. Right? And so let's see. What are you guys saying here? Miss Fish says, leave this on the lurk for a while. Keep it on the background. Yep. But I have loads of people who binge watch my show, and they say it's the best thing. It's like it's an amazing, conscious wallpaper. I like that idea. Oh, love story time. Yep. Let's see. Are you still homeless? Yep. Like again, I'm not homeless because I'm always where I'm supposed to be. Wish we had free healthcare. Yeah, it'd be nice. Yeah, but we can demand this. We allow the country to be as crap. And kids, things are headed, and we're heading for. We're already in a fascist dictatorship. We're what the Romans had, what they called bread and circus. But what we have is fast food and flat screen TVs. And that's what keeps us mesmerized, poisoned and mesmerized. And, I chose to live the life I did because it's the only one that will keep me alive. So I don't eat that crap, and that's what killed me. I was, made a lot of money, ate the fanciest fancies, but it was all poison, all those to die for chocolate cakes and the mousses and the, pates and stuffed ducks. You know, I had a lot of pretty good food, and I don't, regret any of it. There's no sense in regretting something that I enjoyed a great deal. But I learned not to do that again, so I don't. And so, again, homeless, it's relative, Um, I'm not forced to live anywhere I don't want to live, right? And and as I am there to cert, like I said, someone laid down 2 grand to fix my car. You know, I went to the mechanic and I said, so figure out what's wrong with my car, and then tell me, what it is, and tell me what it'll cost. So they did, and they said, this, you need all 4 new tires, you need this, you need that, blah 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 blah. That'll be $2,000. That's why I have like $80. I said, just change the oil and give me new, windshield wipers. And they said, okay. So I said, I'm going over to that place over there, and give me a call when it's done. So I go over there, and a friend of mine meets up with me. So he takes me out to lunch, and we're talking, and we're having a good time. Phone rings, and the guy goes, I don't understand, but someone has put $2,000 um, to get your car fixed. I said, who did it? We have no idea. It just was like a money transfer, and there's no name on it, and um, it's in, it's on a job um, heading, right? So, I said, so can you just give me the oil change and give me the 2,000, the $1,900? And the guy said, no, it's been placed for fixing your car. So you can, we'll change the oil and you can come back another day and we'll add tires. But why don't you got 3 hours? I said, yeah, I'm with a friend. So I stayed with him and we talked some more and we had, some more tea and so now my car is 80% better than it was. New tires, new this, new that. So it's not going to kill me. Driving the 200 miles from the Deep Green to Virginia, the wheels could have fallen off any place, and that would have been it for me. But now my car is, it's what in electrical terms in the code book it says safe but inadequate, right? There's still 20 to 30% more things to do to make it better. So anyway, and the mechanic said, well, your car is probably good for another 40 miles this way, but you should fix the other, then you could get another 100,000 miles out of your car. So we'll see what happens. But what I'm saying is, I have no idea who dropped 2 grand into my car, and it was like, the universe wanted Al to be safe. So my car is now safe. Right? And I have a lot of friends down in Sylvan, Florida, down in the Keys, and, between, Kennedy and the Keys. I have a number of friends who always say, oh, just come on by and, you can stay with us. And so, and I have some friends in New Orleans, and I have some friends in Mississippi, and some friends in Georgia. So I have a lot of friends in the southern, warmer neck of the woods. And I have a lot of options. So am I homeless? No. Now, I would love to be able to go up to the school and be with John, right? We could have fun. We could make videos. We could do a lot of fun. We could travel. I would think that would be amazing, right? But I can't do it until I feel safe. And he still blows up at me and screams at me and then says, oh, I'd never hurt you, And I don't want to be out in the middle of Missouri in a snowstorm. Get out of the car, So, um, let's see. I love story time. Yes, so do I. Let's see. So I answered the homeless question. Hello again. Hello, Kristen Baker. Wish we had free health care. That would be nice. He seemed like he was in a mood earlier. Yes, well, he's always in a mood, and he can go like this, right? So it's like until I can feel safe, I really can't hang out with John. I call him pretty regularly and try to give him pep talks and try to help him. But look, he was, you're judging me. Stop lecturing me. I don't. Was I lecturing him? No. Oh, I don't think I was. Was I? Boo boo boo. It's grown real. Yep, she was real. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a griot. I tell stories. And what do I say? Don't believe a word I say. You need to, I tell you these stories, A, to edify and entertain, and also to sharpen your blade. And that as I tell you the story, you should be able to tell what's true and not true. And like I said, all the stories are true, but, I take artistic license, but pretty much with a crone. No, everything is pretty much 100% what I say, right? I don't think whether or not crone was real is important. Thank you, Fish. This is true. Everything I tell you, I say, griot, these are like little lessons, and they're supposed to ring little bells in your head and your heart and go, this is how I should leave you guys. And pretty much I sense every time I sign off, you're all going, I really like that. Oh, yeah, I'm thinking about that. I feel different. Yeah, okay, I'm going to try and be better. Again, be better. You don't have to be perfect. Just do your best, right? And baby steps is the way to go. And John's a good example of, I just worked out. I starved myself. You're not supposed to starve yourself. I mean, when you do that, your body stores fat. The thing is we're bovine. We're supposed to graze all day long. That's what I do. I eat a little bit. I make a big pot of soup and I eat a little bit of it all day long. And then the next day I throw more stuff into that pot and cook it up and eat 5-6 times. But so I eat maybe 800 calories to 1,000 calories a day. I eat it, not once or 3 times but that's when I'm cooking for myself. Today I went to my favorite place. That video is up on the on my channel, and you can see the kind of place I was in and hear me telling stories to you and everyone else who was listening. And my friend, she was asking good questions, and you guys were having a good chat. But again, right now, I'm in this camera here on I only have one little light bulb over there, and it kind of lights me up pretty good. But it's dark enough so I can read. But Fish knows best. See how she capitalizes everything? I can really read what she says. The stuff that you guys have to kind of squint at it. Let's see. R. So the Irish crone was real. As Fish says, it doesn't really matter. Let's see. Only because it hasn't anything to do with the morals or lessons you can learn from the stories. Yes, and that's what a griot does. Tells you a story that kind of has you think about things. And that's what I do. Right? Ooh, please share them. And that's what I'm doing, Miss Kay. I'm sharing them. Every time I do and KB, how have a lot of people get a lot out of my channel in that they go back. I have at least 1,000 stories on this channel. And they go back and they just, I have friends, I have part of the cadre who watches this. They play it all day long. And, as they're working around the house or at the office, they got it going, right? and it's playing in the background of their life. I do enjoy a good toke, and my basic thing, I love everything botanical, right? I'm not a big chemical kind of guy. Now, I kind of grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I worked in nightclubs, and I was the master electrician at the Fillmore East. I worked for Bob Goddard for the Joshua Light Show and the Pig Light Show, and those guys did Woodstock. I wired Woodstock, but it was quite interesting. We spent a whole month building a great place to have that Woodstock carnival in Woodstock. But the people in Woodstock oh, we're hip, we're like groovy, we're all the music, Bob Dylan, all those guys had places up there, their studios up there, and the county said no, we don't. At the last minute they took the permit away, and so we had to move everything in 1 week over to Max Yasgur's farm, which was private property, and in another county. And he hated all the people, he called them hippies, and he called them Volvo hippies. Anyway, so what we made a beautiful site. Took us a month. We had to rip it all out, and bring it over to Max's, and that's why it was amazing that no one died, because we had high voltage lines in the mud. It was a mess. Anyway, I'm the electrician, right? My job is to deal with that stuff. I'm, not a grip. I'm a lighting designer. I design how the lights. But Bob was the major man. Anyway, so I'm the only guy who had a valid license, didn't really drink or do drugs or anything. So I was the most sober guy there. I would smoke a little puff now and then, but little. I just liked a little bit, because a little bit of cannabis made me very creative. A lot made me just want to eat cookies, right? So I'm a big, just a little bit. And the other thing, I don't smoke anything because I don't have access to any of that. I don't see anybody in the deep green. And every now and then, someone will come in and share with me. And that's really great. So when you never smoke and someone gives you a little bit to smoke with them, that's when you can really enjoy it. And that's everything. You should never say, oh, I'm not going to eat this or not going to do that. Just a little bit, and enjoy it. Not feel guilty about it. Just enjoy it. That's what life's about, to enjoy. Our whole life is meant to be enjoyed, not to be suffered. And whatever suffering you're suffering, you decided to suffer. No one else made you suffer. You are. I mean, I have been in war zones. I've been in places, and when I was a photojournalist, I photographed. That's why I stopped doing it. I just couldn't stand photographing suffering. And my photography was, I never, and some of my editors used to get very upset because I wouldn't photograph the blood and guts, right? What I did photograph were the people who were suffering, who were like in the huddling masses, who they just lost their house, they just lost their family. And instead of rushing and taking pictures of them, I went and helped them, got them out of harm's way, got them a blanket, shared whatever little food I had and water I had, and talked to them until, and I had already worked at the VA, so I understood about PTSD. And I did the things I knew how to, get people out of shock. Then, after I talked to them for, 5 or 6 hours or a day or two, and we were in a safe place, so they weren't like totally catatonic, I would take some pictures of them then. And I got a lot of awards for those pictures. But people can say, well, that was a great photo, and they can be hung up in a, art gallery or a museum. But, the guys who have the TV networks and the newspaper, they want the blood and guts, and I wouldn't do it. So and what happened was I went from being a photojournalist to taking the pictures that I took, and I got invited because my teacher was Lisette Modell and Cartier-Bresson to the New School, got invited to be part of Magnum. And that is a collective that you give them your photos and they sell them and they take a part of it, and that part goes to everybody. And I like that. I like being in a collective like that. So there was a portion of my photo career before I met my first wife and we had our studio in New York, that I was pretty well. The photos I took were put into textbooks, right? The pictures of the marching masses or the suffering masses or the this, sociologic books, anthropologic books. Those, for about 3 years, I had a nice little niche. I did pretty good. I could have lived on just that alone, but I didn't. I had other skill sets that made me money too. And everything I ever did, I enjoyed doing it. And I never had what quote unquote a career. And basically the closest thing I came to having that was being an electrician. I did that the most of anything. But even that, I would work real. I would have a number of projects, and I would work, a restaurant or two, a couple of discos, a recording studio, a few rich people's houses, and I would make a nice fistful of dollars, and I would take off for a year or two and go live someplace in Paris or London or Australia or New Zealand or lots of different places in between. I lived in Sweden for a year just because that government paid people's vacations, and they were so neurotic they wouldn't take the vacation. So you could go to the airport in Stockholm. I don't know if they still have this, but they had a board up where if you were ready to get on the airplane, you could get on it. Not only would you get the airplane ride for free, but you would get the 2 weeks in whatever place you were, the hotel, the tours, and the meals, everything. And I did that for a year. Right? And then I did it again with my first wife. Not for a year, but for, after learning that, wow, this is fun. I took her on, we traveled around a lot that way. And so that's how, I lived. So you could say I was homeless the whole time, It was only once my wife wanted my first wife wanted a house with a picket fence that, I had my master's license and I started, a electric business in New York that had employees, and I had one in Long Island that had employees, and I started a real estate business. So I was working toward, and I had a bunch of houses with picket fences. And once I could see, honey, let's go, here we are. Let's, no, she wanted a divorce instead. So, and I said, okay. So, you know, got a divorce from her, and it only cost me $75 because she had ideas of doing other things, which she went off and did, you know. And if she, and I hadn't quite really started to make money at any things I was doing, but I was on that path, and I did that for 2 or 3 years. And basically, what I did is I turned it over to all of my employees, and I would take a cut. They do all the work. I had a big client list. I had a great office manager who did all the paperwork and got everything going, and I just lived in other countries, and they'd send me a check, and once a year I would come back to America, and I would go down to the building department, and I had to give them $50 and sign a few pages of paper to keep my license going, and then I'd stick around for a little bit and I'd take off again. And that wasn't until and during that time is the last time I saw the Crone. So Ireland was my real home, and I lived there many, many, many times, and for long periods of time, like 8 months to a year or so. And each time I did that, I kind of got myself into really, I lived in this little town called what's the name? Skibbereen was the county seat. Glendore, little teeny fishing village on the west coast. And it was unbelievable. Look, that whole coastline and the islands out just from it was where they shot that Star Wars movie where Luke dies, and he's on these little islands, and the girl comes and finds him and bugs him till he teaches her to be a Jedi. and then that's where he goes and lets go of his body, right? So that island where he was right in my neighborhood near Glendora. And so the little fishing village looked just everything was made out of stone like 400 years ago. And they had, the things that there's a island where these monks lived, and that's the island they shot that movie at. And the houses that he lived at, those kind of like roundish stone house, they're known as bead houses, right? Because they're all made out of stone, except the roofs are usually thatched hut. And the ones out on the islands are all stone because they don't have thatch, and it's like all they got is stone, and it's windy weather all the time. So anyway, that's where I lived, and I lived there with a woman who was the doctor of the town, and pretty much this is when everybody in Ireland was on the dole. And the fishermen, they went out there mostly just to, you know, go meet some guy in another boat to bring hash back into Ireland and to do a little fishing, but most of them were Germans, and Ireland, the west coast of Ireland, was the most survivable place in Europe for a nuclear war because all the air came across the Atlantic from Mexico. And the west coast of Ireland is not like the east coast. East coast is like in the North Sea. West coast is in the Gulf of Mexico. The west coast of Ireland has palm trees. The Ring of Kerry, which are these peninsulas, little peninsulas that stick out in the Atlantic, and they're about, I don't know, 20 to 40 miles long, and they're about a mile and a half between each other. It's like, a hand, right? And that water is always 70 degrees. And so a woman there, the crone, Archie and the crone hooked me up with this woman. And this woman was like what the crone was 100 years ago. She was in her early 30s, and she was really hot, and she was of Scottish blood, but she grew up in Ireland, in England, and Scotland, and she went to Oxford, and she got her medical degree in Scotland, and what's the name of that town? And her father was pretty well-to-do surgeon, and she was really smart, but she loved Ireland, and she loved taking care of those people, and she took care of that whole friggin' town. And basically, everyone was self-medicated and on the dole, and just having tons of babies, and not being too responsible. And the Catholic Church gave up on these people. The church was still there, but the church, they sent no priests there, right? Because they had no money. So the church wasn't going to make any money out of these people, and they wouldn't, bend over for the church. So anyway, when I showed up, and she and I really sparked, and she had two boys. She had her sister's boy. So when she was at medical school, when she was at Oxford, she met this guy who was an actual African prince, and they had an affair, and she had a baby with him, and he left her with the baby. But this kid was like a king. He had this noble. He was like Kimbo from the Lion King, and he was this noble, really smart. Just and his mom, the doctor, she didn't send him off to school to hang out with all the hoodlums. She taught him. She kept him at home, and he was like 6 and could read Latin. And was really. So he liked me a lot, because I gave him a lot of attention, and I took him out and we fixed things, we did things, and basically what happened was the town decided that we had to be married, and I would be the town had no priest, so I would be their priest, right? So at first, my Dr. Sweetie, and the other son wasn't hers. Her sister she was like the bizarro sister of my girlfriend. And so when my girlfriend had a baby with an African king, she had a baby with a Jamaican drug dealer. So her son was like a gangster. Like at 4, he like scared everyone. So, and these two boys were like brothers. They were at 180 degrees from each other. Yet they kind of got along. They they had only each other to play with. They were like the only black kids on the whole west coast of Ireland, and they got into so much trouble. I mean, the gangster boy did, and the older regal one always tried to like cover for him, stop him from doing terrible things, and stepping up for him. He was like 4 years older. Her sister's boy was like four, but still, it was like a gangster at four. So this girl, this doctor girlfriend I had, she was beautiful. She was brilliant. She really loved my ass, and I really loved her. And we had, for the first 6 months, we had this unbelievable. I mean, she would run around because her house was like not in town, but like off, right? And so people really had to walk a mile to more than a mile. And she was like up right before the mountain range went like this. So you had to walk up through these rocky meadows and up a pretty steep hill to get to her place. And so, once we were there, she'd run around naked all the friggin' time, right? And just grab me and throw me on the ground and have her way with me. And her son and the gangster kid were always somewhere else, right? And they knew, okay, be home, wake up, have breakfast, Al will cook for us, and then he'll take us out and we'll do some kind of adventure. And then around 11, we'd come back, we'd have tea, and then they would take off. Love the fact I would just let them take off. The oldest one was about 7, the youngest one was 4 or 5. And these kids, we let them, and I treated them, they were my pack, and I was the alpha dog, right? And, my doctor, sweetie, she was mama, right? So they loved her, and so they never did anything to her to upset her, right? They would go up and do crazy shit, but it was far enough away from the town, so they never pissed the town off, right? And the crone would show up, and Archie once in a while showed up. And anyway, so after the first month, I just fell in love with her, and for 6 months we had this unbelievably beautiful, fun, and we were helping, And I had been with the crone, 4 years earlier. How old was I? No, it's maybe 8 years earlier. And so I knew how to, I was a good doula, right? So I was a good assistant, and I had worked at the VA. So I was, I, as a psychologist, could deal with everyone's problems. So that's why the closest thing they had to understanding of what I was a priest. They used to call me Father, Father Al, or Doctor. That was the other thing they called me. But she was a doctor. We were the two doctors. We were the double doctors, right? And so the crone and Archie used to like smile when they'd see us, and they were like wanting us to end up like they were, right? And they wanted us to take their place so they could take the step up into ascension. And Archie was like in his 80s, and the crone was, God knows how old the crone was. I mean, she was in her older 20s in World War One, right? So you take this was 1982, maybe. Actually, it was just before Ireland joined the Maastricht Treaty. So whenever that was, right? And they joined the EU. And that's when they changed. They went from being a poor country to be a rich country, right? Yeah. And so anyway, so we're out in this town, and I'm taking care. And like one day, all these people get drunk and smoke all the time, and they basically ignore it. They just keep popping kids out, right? And so they have a pretty large the population was maybe 300, and like 180 of them were kids, right? And so I said, you can't, and the mothers were always screaming at these kids and never taking care of them. I said, you guys need to have daycare. And they, what's that? And I said, well, the church, you bring all the kids to the church, and 3 of you girls or husbands, or three of you parents, watch after those kids that day. And then the next day, another three of you do that. I tried to get them to do that. They wouldn't do that. They said, oh, taking all the kids to church, you take care of them, Father. Father Al, Father Doctor, Doctor, Father Al. And so I kind of got hornswoggled into doing that. And it was okay because I kind of treated um, all of those kids like I treated those two boys, you know? So I know about 20 different points on your body that if I just touch them, not punch them, not hit them, just touch them, it kind of makes them, it's like the Vulcan death grip. I know 20 different places on your body that I can do the Vulcan nerve pinch, right? And it's really painful, but it doesn't hurt you. Totally immobilized, you can't move, but it doesn't hurt you, right? And there are a couple of ones, if I do them the right way, I can knock you out, right? So yeah, that's a real thing, and I know how to do it. So I would do it to the worst kids. My girlfriend's sister's gangster son, I do it to him all the time. And at a certain point, I changed my strategy, and I said, okay, to the noble Kimba, I said, listen, buddy, every time he disobeys, I'm going to pinch you. What? I didn't do anything. The first time and he said, I didn't do anything. I said, you let him do that. And the 4-year-old just giggled. I said, buddy, you'll get your turn. And so, within 4 or 5 weeks, I had him kind of trained to not be actively, unbelievably, catastrophically misbehaving, right? So they were contained pretty well. And then we let them run up in the hills and run all that energy out and build forts and, whack each other. I said, so you can fight, but, don't break anything on your bodies and no scars, And I started to teach them Qigong and Tai Chi. So you guys learn this and we'll go into Aikido next, right? And so anyway, they liked that. And then I had to take care of the rest of those other kids. So I had to do the same thing with all of them. And they all kind of towed the line. And so Ireland no one had a car, so they had pretty good bus service. So they, I got they had social service. Like I said, everybody's on adults. So I went over to the social service lady in the county seat and said, okay, I'm going to, oh, you're the priest doctor guy. And I said, please, Al. And the lady said, you're so lucky. Marion is such a beautiful woman, and she's she's so smart. You make such a great, Anyway, everyone in that frigging county, had us being married and running that town. And it was like, and I could still be there doing that, right? So what happens is, we're doing this. We have 6 months of pretty amazingness. And my sweetie, she starts to realize I'm the closest thing to the perfect guy she ever had. And that's when it went sideways, because she just started visualizing that. Instead of the 6 months where we just were blissfully in love with each other and accepting each other for what we were and enjoying each other for what we were. And so I had a friend in Dublin who had this theater, right? And I wanted to take her and the boys to Dublin, but she's a doctor. She can, everyone's health depends on, and that's the other thing. She was this person that everyone she wanted everyone to depend on her, and then she wanted to depend on me. And, I'd just gotten divorced a year or so earlier, and I had other girlfriends who wanted to marry me and have babies, and they were all great women. And, I could have done that. And 2 of them came from extraordinarily wealthy families. And one of them, Stephanie's father, he was a Swiss banker. He offered me $1 million to marry his daughter. And that was the end of that. Killed our relationship when he did that. He didn't do it. And he took me out to lunch. He was staying at the Waldorf, and lunch with him. And he goes, you're the man for my daughter. And I said, what? He goes, well, she's, classically educated. She played the violin. She was like first seat on the, you know, um, Stockholm Philharmonic. I mean, she was a brilliant, unbelievable girl. And she was, a Playboy pinup. She was on Sports Illustrated cover in their swimsuit um, issue. She was a Ford model, and she too, But he came to visit, saw where we lived, took me out to lunch and said, this was my wild daughter. She never listens to anything. That she does everything opposite. She had the best education, and she became a bohemian. And then, she's in porno magazines. I said, Playboy is not a porno magazine. Anyway, and then he goes, listen, I want her to come. I want her to get married. I want to have grandchildren. I want her to come back to Switzerland. You marry her, I'll give you $1 million. I'll give you a check right now. And I'll give you a job in my bank where you'll never have to worry about money. And you can, she'll live in the lifestyle I want her to be. And she loves you and she'll be happy. Anyway, I, I had lunch with him and I said, well, I'll have to think about that. And, she looked at me sideways when I came back from lunch. And she didn't say anything. And then a couple, he stayed there a week. He had business, and about the third day, I didn't say, your father offered me $1 million to marry you. Anyway, she said to me, so how much, third day, and you could tell there was a tension there. And she said, so how much did my father offer you to marry me? And I said, $1 million, and he wants us to get married, you to come back to, Brussels, and I'm going to go to work for him. And she just looked at me, and I said, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to spoil what we have. The lifestyle we have in New York is the lifestyle I want with you. And she just kind of looked at me. And so he was going to go back home the next day. We were going to have dinner at the Waldorf. So she got all sweetened up. I got cleaned up as best as I could. And we went there, and I said, sir, A, I have to say no, but B, you should not offer me $1 million to marry your daughter. I love your daughter. If we're going to get married, we're going to do it our own way, Anyway, and so he just kind of looked at me and said, okay. And, we kind of cut we didn't, drink champagne. He was expecting, to have the celebration. And I basically, after appetizers and our first cocktail, I told him that. So we went back, and she kissed me, and we were sweet and nice to each other. But that was it. We kind of, and I had this loft, and I said, I got this gig in Europe. Why don't you come to Europe? She goes, no, I have work to do here in New York. And I said, you know what? I'm going to, because this was at a place called Westbeth, and it had been an old phone building. And then when Bell built their big building downtown that looked like Darth Vader, it was called the Long Lines Building. They gave that building to the city, and the city renovated that building to be housing for the 120 artists that made Soho. And I came back from one of my journeys, and a friend of mine said, listen, Al, call this lady. She wants to talk to you. I called her up. She ran the NYSCA, New York State Council on the Arts. And she goes, you're one of 120. You have a loft waiting for you at Westbeth. And I went there and said, woo. And, lived there. It was really nice. And it was like old folks' home for, middle-aged artists. And I'm still a young guy. I was in my, mid-20s. And I had a girlfriend who was a Ford model, really beautiful, really, really. And but she was manic depressant, and and she loved me, and I loved her, and but she kept trying to kill herself, and then one time she succeeded. So she'd be with me, and she would be just manic, and when she was manic, she was the most fun, right? And then she'd be gone, and I couldn't find her, and a friend would say, "Oh, she's in the hospital," and I would go see her, and you know love her, and then she would come back after the go, and she'd live with me in my loft, not that loft, but another loft I was in, and she, you know, killed herself. And at the funeral, that's when I met Stephanie, and Stephanie, this was her best friend who committed suicide, and Stephanie was a lot like her, but mentally a lot more stable, right? And so I mean, she had her issues, just like everyone does, but she was not manic depressive. And that's the thing. People call John crazy. John's not crazy. He's just neurotic. And Stephanie wasn't neurotic. Growing up with her family would drive anyone to be nuts, but she wasn't. She had her issues. You push her buttons, she'd go up like a racehorse. But I never did. And I understood her. But what happened? We met at that funeral. And I was still pretty broken up, but by her best friend and my girlfriend committing suicide, we were both kind of broken up. And I kind of, got involved in something in Boston, and I went up there. And when I came back, that's when my friend said, "Hey, you got this loft, or this phone number, call this person, this person. Oh, you got this loft." So I was there, for a few weeks. I was settling in. It was a great loft, right? And not only was it a great loft, but that place it had a big, nice, open foyer in the middle of the building. It had a great um, garden, and it had a portion of it was glassed in like a greenhouse, and it was like a little restaurant. You could go there for meals. It was like cafeteria, and it had an art gallery, and it had a theater, and it was really great. It was a place where artists could work on their art, and show it there, produce it there, and the city realized this was a good thing to have this like factory. It was kind of based on Andy Warhol's factory, but a lot nicer. And we didn't have to pay rent, and no electric bill, no gas bill, no heat bill. It was all taken care of. And we all did a lot of, teaching in public schools, and we had a lot of kids there teaching them art and having them work in our shops and studios. And so it was a win-win kind of thing. So I had this really nice loft and pretty much had it for the rest of my life in perpetuity. Anyway, I went to a party, and there was Stephanie. And we had both grieved over the loss of our friend and lover. And she was my girlfriend's lover too, right? And so, they, polyamorous, to the plus. And so, anyway, we met at this party, and we sat and we talked about our mutual lover, and then I said, "You hungry? This party's kind of a bore. Let me." And I took her over to Luna's, which is the best Italian restaurant in New York, and it's a mobster. So it's like the front part of the restaurant is all tourists, and people line up around the block to this place, and all the mobsters walk in the back door and where the kitchen is, and they have a dining room in the kitchen, and that's for the mobsters and for the family of the people who own Luna's and the people who work there, and for people like me. Grandma Luna, I kept that, her restaurant, because of Mike Pinelli, my godfather, mobster, Mr. Tablecloth and crunchy rolls. Anyway, long story short, we walk. It's around 11 o'clock. The line is still around the block to go into Luna's, and she goes, "We'll have to wait online." I said, "No, we don't." And I took her around down the alley into the back door, and Grandma goes, "Oh, la la, comes and kisses me, and she goes, "Here's this is your new girlfriend, isn't it?" And she wasn't quite my new girlfriend. I just saw her again at the party, and basically she goes, "Oh, I want grandchildren. You need to have babies with this man." And anyway, so she, grandma's really laying it on thick, and she makes us a special meal. She cooks it right there, and she picks, she makes all the things like eggplant parmesan, and she has this kind of lasagna that's more like uh, beef stroganoff, and all a hot antipasta and a cold antipasta, and fish and salad, a real Italian meal, and desserts, and different wines all through the thing. So, and espresso, and cognac at the end, and you know, so we're not feeling any pain, and we're really just 10 blocks from my loft. So we walk, you know, down to Canal Street, and we walk. Um, Actually, we take the long way around. Basically, what I do is we walk down to Canal Street, and then we go underneath the Manhattan Bridge, and we go through Chinatown and Confucius Plaza, and then up the backside of Manhattan Bridge, which is where there's a nice a Jewish neighborhood that were not Hasidim but more Reformed Jews, and they, a lot about six projects for those guys who survived the Holocaust. It's a really nice neighborhood, and you pop out on the west side over near the Holland Tunnel, and Westbeth, um, my walk building, was just on this little street on the backside of Holland Tunnel. And that was another reason why that building was given to us, because it had a constant hum from the tunnel, right? And so, anyway, we walk that nice walk, and it's a really, it was a beautiful night, and the air was clear. It was like it was a warmish night, so it was either spring or summer, and it wasn't really hot. So anyway, so we have this, after this big meal, we have this nice walk all the way around. And when we're in Chinatown, I go into a bun shop and get a bunch of buns, meat buns and fruit buns. And I don't know if you guys have ever had dim sum, but it's a dim sum shop, and part of dim sum are these really yummy buns. And so I get those for our breakfast, because I walk her back to my loft, and so nature takes its place, because we're already snuggling and kissing on our walk. There were all these like little mini parks that you could hang out and snuggle and all the above. And these are all neighborhoods that aren't like abandoned. They're not like dangerous neighborhoods, and they're like right down the street from Police One Plaza, where all the cops are. So this is one of the more safer neighborhoods in New York. And the mob is there, and the Jewish mob is here, and the Chinese mob is there. So no stupid drug addict is gonna mug you, because they end up dead. And anyway, so we have this nice thing, and I take her up to my thing, and it has a great view into Lower Manhattan, into City Hall and Wall Street and the Brooklyn Bridge, right, over Canal Street. Right, really nice view. So we sit, and I have some nice liquor, and we have some herb, and she has some other party treats, and so we do all of that, and I have a nice big bathtub, so we first take a nice soap each other up real well, and in the shower, and then we get in my big bathtub that I put there because I love it, and I let her soak, and I just sit at the other end, massaging her feet and her legs, and she's just oohing and eyeing, purring like a kitty, and that was it. We spent the next 6 months together, and we were the it couple. I was the dude, and she was the girl on the you know Sports Illustrated cover, right? And she, the second week she was living in my loft. Um, she was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And every place, every newsstand, there she was. She's on my arm, and there she is, barely dressed, hanging out on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So that's when we became the it couple. And she loved to dance, so every night we'd go to 4 or 5 different discotheques and then go have a really nice dinner at one or two and I built a lot of restaurants. And part of my gig with restaurants, because unless they're really professional and really know the thing, they don't make money for the 6 months, because they've just spent $500,000 on fixing a place up. So anyway, part of my deal was, okay, give me a chunk of change to begin, a chunk of change in the middle, and at the end, when everything's done, another chunk of change, but you can still owe me half of what you owe me, and you can pay me over time. And for that, I get I can go into your restaurant and bring as many people as I want, drink, eat, right, until you finish, and you can't take that off the bill. That is like the interest, right? And so, yeah, you can take your sweet time paying me off, but I'm still going to eat you out of house and home. So I had a lot of restaurants I could roll into, like the Odeon. You could go because when it was Towers Cafeteria, when what was his two, Joan, and what was her husband's name? That guy, Artie and Joan, right? Two old Jewish, and they were like in their 50s when they sold that place out. But his father did it and had run it and his grandfather started it like in 1894, and Art took over like in the 1950s or so, and he retired, and he owned a bunch of little loft buildings. So I renovated I fixed the wiring of that place was like from 1890, and so I rewired it a couple of times, and I fixed up all his other buildings, and he rented them out, and then the art scene hit him, and Tribeca came, so he did pretty good. So he didn't sell that building, but he rented it out to the people who did the Odeon, and me and my crew did that the first time around. So whenever you watch Saturday Night Live, the old ones, like from about 10, 15 years ago, they do all the shots at the Odeon, because the Odeon was the place, and it still is the place, still going on, the Odeon. And so that was one of the places I could go and eat at, and Luna's, and a couple of Chinese restaurants, and a whole bunch of restaurants in Soho and Midtown. And I worked for the guy who had Restaurants Associates, who owned Windows on the World, so I could go up to that place, and there would always be a table waiting for me. So I had a lot of restaurants, a lot of nightclubs, a lot of really amazing clubs way uptown where only Black or Hispanic people went to. But I had wired that place. So, hello, how you doing? So it's like straight out of the Goodfellas scene, right? Where he takes his new Jewish girlfriend to this place that's like a warehouse, and Tony Bennett is singing there. Anyway, so Stephanie loved that, and she loved me, and she loved that every day was a new day without any expectations, and that's how she wanted to live her life. So when her father came and offered me $1 million to marry, that ruined that for her, because she thought I would always begrudge her that I didn't get that $1 million, right? And she should have known better, right? But anyway, what happens is the space grew wider and wider, and she did more and more, things that she would be out of town for longer and longer periods of distance. But she would always come back, and we'd always be sweet. We always had a great sex life, and we always had fun, but there was that space growing. And so that's when I went to Ireland. I said, I want you to have this apartment, this law. And it was like a big apartment. It was 1,800 square feet, and but it wasn't like the gigantic loft I had, but it was, for New York, for Manhattan, that was prime real estate. And I went to the board, and I said, I have this place in perpetuity. I want Stephanie to have it. Everyone there saw us as the it couple. And I said, I love her and she loves this place. And you know me, I'm a traveling guy. And she's in New York probably more than I am. She loves this place. And I love her and I want her to have it. I want to change the name. Legally I want her to have it. Right. And so we did that. And so she, it was very nice because every time I came in, it was a big enough thing. She had some of my friends make a mini little apartment over in the corner. So whether she was having an affair or had a boyfriend or anything, I always had a place. I didn't have to stay on a couch. I had my little apartment in our loft, but it was her loft. And then what happened was she went up to Europe and she met this sheik, and she was whisked off her feet. And he took her to Saudi Arabia and basically like chained her and married her and started popping babies out. And the loft went to, it still stayed in her name, but she had friends. She had a gay guy who was our friend, and he had a boyfriend, and the boyfriend was dying of AIDS, and nobody would rent them a place. Or this is like when having AIDS was like having cholera. I mean, everyone thought if you drank out of a glass you'd get AIDS, or they breathed on you, you'd get AIDS. And I had worked in medicine enough and knew enough people who had AIDS that I knew that it was a blood-borne disease. Anyway, so they were living there. And I still had my little apartment. And so when I wasn't doing something else in New York, I had another place in New York. I always had that place I could always go to. And I had a shop that I could always go to that my best friend, it was really his name, and I had a little corner of it too. And, because he always had electric, as a plumber, he always had electric issues. And, and he's one of my best friends. I've known him 50 years. I have friends that best friends that I could call up and they would drop whatever they were doing and come help me, right? Because that's what a best friend does. And they live in New York. I have some friends in Toronto that way, and I have some friends in Florida that way, and I have some friends in Georgia that way who just drop everything and come and help me, right? So I'm at that place, and all of a sudden Stephanie shows up. The two gay guys, one with dying of AIDS, and me in my little apartment off the corner of the loft. And Stephanie at the door, and she comes in, and it's still in her name. This is still her loft, right? But she knocks on. She comes in, and she's weeping, and she has two babies and a little boy. And the two babies are twin girls. And the prince was just going to have the girls killed, right? He's a Saudi Arabian prince, and and he was turning the little boy into a messianic, misogynistic, asshole. Anyway, and so she says, "Oh, my life, I just I had she escaped." And she's high, and this guy's got enough money to have guys looking for her in New York, right? So when she and I were the it couple, my mobster friends really loved her because she was, on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and especially Mike. I was his grandson. He had no children, and I was his grandson. He was my godfather, godfather, my grandfather, you name it, he was it. And he was super connected. And he loved Stephanie. And so I went to him and said, Mike, she told him the whole story, because don't worry about it. I got it covered. So I stayed there a while, and basically this, guy from Saudi Arabia, he basically, when that guy, had his guys looking for her, he was in New York, in the Statler Hilton or wherever he was, and Mike just went in there, grabbed him, and had his guys hang this guy out like a 30th-story window. They broke, this is a place that can't open the window, and they had one of those little things you just click it and the glass just shatters and right. So, and they just hung him out the window and said, "Listen, you leave New York, you never come back, you never threaten this girl again. Forget about these children. You come to New York, you'll be dead. We don't care." How much money you have. We don't care what kind of political power you have. This is New York City. This is our town, and you will be dead. Dead. And the only reason we don't drop you out this window is that you're the father of those children. And someday you will give them a lot of money. And then everything was good, right? And so we tried to be the it couple with 3 kids, but that didn't quite fly. And she had gotten to this place where she was happy with who she was. All her issues, didn't come to the level of her being the mama warrior, right? And so her whole life was about these kids. And I was just their godfather, right? And that's how she explained it, to her little 4-year-old son. This is your godfather, Your father is a worthless piece of shit. He's your godfather. He will take care of you. And he will, and, I started making him my electric helper, right? So for another 6 months, we had a really amazing relationship, but it was not, it had too many walls in the way for us to be anything but what we were, right? And she didn't want another man. She had it with men, and she was nursing, and people got really upset with it. How can you have your children with a man who have AIDS? I mean, this is what upsets me about people. They only come from fear. They have no idea what's going on. And they make these judgments and do the stupidest things. Let's see what you guys have been saying. Let's see. Oops. Wish we had free healthcare. He seemed like he was on a mood. Was the Irish crone real? Right now, I hand seeing a cloak I have to mostly finished. Just really get a hood. I love you, Fish. My mind puts these stories in like murals. Yeah, that's I try to paint them for you, and just watch them. Yep. And I am a painter. I'm a painter of stories. I was a painter. I learned how to paint scenery. I learned to employ. So I tell a story and on this 2-dimensional little thing here, but I try to make it in a 3-dimensional imagery, right? Lena, haven't heard from you in a long. Good to see you, my sister. And you need to come back more and get a hold of me. Any of you guys, get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. The Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, right? And and now I'm in a place that has pretty good internet, and I'll get back to you and talk to you. Babo, yes. I miss you calling me Babo. So I hope you're doing well. Oh, and Anna, give me, contact me on the email. I'm on WhatsApp, and I'll give you my phone number. You can call me, and then we can talk on WhatsApp, right? So anyone who wants to talk to me, get a hold of me at Gmail. We'll talk a little bit on Gmail. I'll give you my phone number, and then you call me, or you give me your phone number and I'll call you. So we'll go that way. I'm moving into the 21st century, at least for this month. UJ, Kyle Rittenhouse, best friend Thomas Bobler was an associate, and they let him go free because he's the sheriff's son. It's called justice, meaning just for us, right? You should be surprised, right? I don't think so. What do you have here? Socks twisted. Again, violence. There is no space for violence. People are violent. It's there, I step in the way of violence. I do not speak for violence. I took an oath never to be violent, right? And, that was before I was born. And I have been in the most extraordinary violent situations. And I've always been the person who steps in between and keeps the innocent safe. And that's what I am tutoring all of you of the cadre on how to do in your own life. To in every day, in every way, take the piece of the earth and make it stronger. Now, I totally can understand. So I'll tell you, I've only been violent once in my life. Once, right? I had a good friend. His name was Carlton Haynes. And he was one of the first marble men. He just had that cutout look. But he was a rich boy from Park Avenue. And his mother came from a rich family. And they were extraordinarily cultured. And they were Dutch. They were the original mobsters in America, in New York City, right? Before the Italians, before the Jews, before the Irish, his family was it, right? So they had a lot of real estate, they had a lot of money. His mother was into real estate and into antiques and rare books. And this guy was educated, like super refined. He knew everything about furniture, everything about literature, everything about everything. And he was really handsome, and he always had like 3 amazing, gorgeous women on each arm, right? And he'd walk into any party with like 3 women on arm. So I was at 16, I was his wingman. And so we'd go, and girls would be around like flies, like around shit. And he was the biggest jerk. And people would go, why are you his friend? He's such a jerk. But he was loads of fun, super connected. And I was his best friend. He was like 30-something years old, and I was 16. And, so he had access, like I told you, I'm really drawn to access. So he had access to, Uber. He had access to the Rockefeller and the Morgan special access libraries, right? So I mean, he liked all the things I liked, and he came from a paranormal family, and whenever we like one time he took me to a piece of property upstate New York that his family had, and it was like when the Gilded Age. It was a Gilded Age house, and it was like. And this was like a portal into some really strange paranormal things. I mean, you walked, and it had this, it was a 3-acre lot with this gigantic Gilded Age house that no one had lived in for 100 years. And when we drove in there, he was going to get something. And I have no idea why he even brought me. But it was like a couple of days before Halloween. He had a big bag of candy corn. I mean, a big bag of candy corn. I took a few bites of it, and it was like stale, like 18-year-old candy corn. He goes, you're not supposed to eat that. I said, oh, well, why did you bring it? And he said, well, it's an offering. So we stop at this place, and and we drive onto the property, right? And it's like there's a big cast iron gate, and it's like we drive up to it, and it's like opens, some, ghostly hand opens this gate, and we drive in with a U-Haul truck. He's going to get some stuff out of this place. And we drive up to the house, and on the side of the house, a waterfall is coming out the attic window, right? And it's Halloween, October, so it's fall, but not really cold. It's like in the 50s or so, and it's a cloudy day, and the water is coming out of the window, hitting the ground, and freezing on the ground. I mean, it's 40 or 50 degrees, but it's freezing on the ground. I'm going, what is this, Carlton? There's a waterfall coming out of an attic window, and as far as I can see, there is still a window there. It's not like broken out. It's not like the window is up. It's like the water is going through the glass. I mean, what is behind the glass? And it looked like kids were behind the glass, and the whole attic was full of water. It was like they were goldfish. And I'm looking at this going, there's something really wrong with this. I don't feel right. This is not, anyway, he turned around and he talked to me like I never heard him ever. And that's not how Carl, he had this kind of smooth, and he was super refined. And like I said, every woman was drawn to him. Anyway, so I'm like, Carlton, you know what? I'm going to go out and wait across this, I'm going to walk the acre and a half down to that gate. And if it doesn't open for me, I'm jumping over it, and I'm going across the street and down the street and wait on that corner until you show up. If you don't show up, I'm going to walk into town and take a bus back to New York. I think there was a train there. I think it was near Austin. Anyway, and that's what I did. And anyway, later on, he came and got me, and he had, he says, okay, he goes, well, what did you think about that? I said, that was the weirdest thing. And I've seen a lot of weird shit in my 16 years. And, I don't even want to know. And I don't even want to know what's in your truck. And once we get back to New York, I'm going to take a little vacation from hanging out with you, right? And I did, it was fall time. I basically took my, rucksack and went down to the Amtrak and got a train to Durham, got out and went to my buddies who were at Duke, and then I waited around a week at Duke at the library and had some fun looking at things, and then we all took my friend's big truck and went down to Bahia Honda, which was a park, a federal park right on the water, right on the Keys, right? And we spent 2 weeks there, and they went back to school, and I spent, until April showed up, and I found a nice young lady to be my camping buddy, and so I came back in April, refreshed, and found myself a place to live in New York. I stayed at my friend Charlie's. He had a gigantic loft, and he worked at a place called Food. You go Google Food. Two nice Jewish girls from Queens started. I was the first real restaurant in Soho, and I helped them build that place. It was their. It was had been an old luncheon stand for all the workers, but it was a really one-story building with big, floor-to-ceiling windows all the way around, right on the corner of Worcester and Spring Street. And that was the first real restaurant in Soho. And that was another, and they baked really great Jewish bread and cakes, and had the best coffee, and made soups. And so they'd have these amazing big Jewish sandwiches, with like that much meat in them. And, people who would come to, make the tour of Soho from Westchester, and they made a fortune feeding all those people, right? Anyway, so that was the place to eat for, and I could go in the kitchen door and they give me, because I built that place for them. And Charlie was their number one guy. He was the charming black man who worked the cash register, and he was also quite handy at martial arts. And back when they opened it, was still a skanky. Soho was a skanky, abandoned factory zone, right? And Wilco was going to, not Wilco, but Con Ed was going to build a nuclear reactor there and pump the hot water because Edison couldn't transmit electricity any further than 6 miles before it died. And so he could pump steam all over. So you go to New York City and in the wintertime, you see all the steam coming out of the street. That's Edison's steam lines. And they would have steam turbines every 6 miles. And then, the current would be distributed within that neighborhood. And then, so they could pump the steam further than they could pump the electricity. And so after they went into AC using Tesla equipment, they still had all these steam lines in the ground. So they then started pumping that steam into apartments. And so they were going to take the nuclear steam and pump it into everyone's apartments. The NRC said, no, not a good idea. So Con Edison owned all of this property, and it was managed by Sylvan Moran, who was a company I worked for a lot. And so doing electric work. And so they basically, I could always stay at Charlie's, right? He had a big, nice loft. And I helped him get that loft because Sylvan Lawrence had it. And there weren't that many people living in Soho at that time. And so that was when Soho was loads of fun. Food, so you can go Google food, and on the corner of Worcester and Spring. And now they have built skyscrapers. And one of the nicest things about Soho was that it was built back in the day when the tallest buildings were 6 stories high, and the streets were very wide, and so Soho had great light. Every one of those lofts, because they didn't have electricity, and that's why they didn't build high buildings, and that's why they gave a lot of space between them, because they were all factories and they didn't have any lighting, so they had to have sunlight. So, and that's why it was great for painters, because it had a lot of sunlight. So Charlie was a painter, and he was also had been a Marine, so he could kill you 20 different ways. But he was the sweetest, gentlest, nicest guy. So we're talking about violence. So here's a guy who is, schooled assassin, but he'd rather be a painter and work in a restaurant where only old ladies who came to get lunch while they were on tour of seeing all the bohemians, right? But if anyone, thought this place was an easy pushover, Charlie was at the cash register, and anybody went to rob that place. It was really, I felt sorry for them. So it's like Little Italy. The police never hung out there because the mobsters, if anyone did anything wrong who wasn't meant to be there, like I lived in a building there that a friend of mine owned, and this is when real estate in Soho was starting to get expensive. And there's 2 Little Italies in New York, one on the east side, one on the west side. One near Father Fagan Square off of McDougal Street, and the other one is off Thomas Street over near Canal Street that everyone knows. That's a Little Italy that everyone knows. But anyway, the one on the other one is where all the Italian mobsters lived in apartments. And they didn't live there because they were living on Staten Island in their big houses. That's where they grew up, and Grandma was living in those apartments, and they were all rent controlled. So my friend Howard got one of these buildings, but they had 32 apartments, and they were all really nice apartments, and the grandmas were paying like $15 a month. And if he could get rid of the grandmas, he could probably get $1,000 a month for these apartments. Anyway, so he basically rips all the windows out and turns the heat off and takes the grant money he got from Jimmy Carter to make his apartment energy, efficient, and he went off to Brazil. And the mobsters went and found him and hung him out the window and of his hotel room and had him sign the building over to them. But I was living there, and when I told Howard, don't do this. This is not right. And so what I did was I made it right. I couldn't stick windows in there, but I plasticed up all the windows, and I got the heat working again. So grandma, because mine was brought up by my grandma, so I have a very soft spot in my heart for grandmas. And the mobster, Mike, he's my godfather, and so, good boy, Al, good boy. So I didn't get any static on that. But one day I was coming in the apartment, and this girl who lived with her grandma on the fifth floor, Mary Ellen, she was coming in, and some guy jumped right into once she opened up the door, he jumped in and he was going to rape her right in the hallway. And I was right behind him, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he before he just was like, cornering her in the corner, and that's when I showed up and said, "What are you doing?" And he brushed right by me, and before you knew it, all the mobsters, young teenage boys, were running down the whole. Well, I got a pretty good look at this guy, and he was not one of the neighborhood. He said, "What do you look like?" I said he had orange blonde hair, and he was wearing a T-shirt, and he had jeans, and whatchamacallit, sneakers, right? Trainers. And so I take her up and give her to grandma, calm her down, make sure she's okay, and I come back down, and they got this guy, and they're beating the ever living crap out of him with baseball bats, and it's not the guy. Right, this guy's wearing a suit and has a briefcase and has wingtips, and yes, he has blonde hair, but he's like not 20 years old. He's like 40 years old. And I wait, and these guys knew me, and I kind of broke it up, and they like turn at me with their adrenaline. We're gonna kill you. I said, no, this ain't the guy. If you really want justice. And I repeated what he looked like. Anyway, long story short, I get that guy and I, bring him out of the neighborhood and get him in a cab and send him to St. Joseph's. And I said, listen, if you need any money to fix yourself, here's my phone number. I will have people who will, give you money for what happened, but don't go to the police. Just do not. If you don't want any more of that, I will get you someone from the family who will make amends, but don't go to the police. Go to the hospital, get yourself taken care of. Call me. I will talk to someone who will come visit you and take care of all your medical bills and make it right for you. We don't need the courts. We don't need lawyers. And you will not be happy if you go that way. So the guy goes, thank you, saving my life and putting me in the cab. And so I got his name, his phone number, and, I knew he was going to St. Joseph. I told the cabbie, just take him to St. Joseph. Don't take him any place else, St. Joseph. And he does. And, so next, I go talk to Mike and a few other guys. Big Tony, who had the coffee shop down the street, who kind of ran that corner, and tell them what happened. And here's the guy's name and number, and you could go get the fixer to take care of this guy in the right way. So yeah, no problem. So next day, I'm walking down the street, and this policeman I know, who's a detective, he says, Al, I want to show you something. And so he takes me, and so in this neighborhood, there are all these, like apartment houses, and there's this one where either the apartment, they didn't build anything, but it's like, it's black topped, and it's got basketball nets at either end, and it has a wall that you can play handball on or racquetball. I used to have a girlfriend who loved playing racquetball. My gorilla girlfriend. But that's a whole nother story. And I'll tell you that another time. But anyway, the detective takes me there, and the cops are there, and the police, and the CSI, and and that kid who I saw pushing that girl in the corner. They finally got the right kid, But they took him to the roof, dangled him off, and let him go. He went head first down six, woo, bang, right into through the basketball net. So it kind of like broke his arms off, and his head smashed into the asphalt concrete ground. And he was a mess. No arms and bushed, right? And the type said, "Is this the guy you saw going at Jamaro?" Yep, that's the guy. You know who he is? No idea. A real, unfortunate loser, stupid person to even think. And the guy says, "Yep, case closed." They didn't go after those guys at all. So that's the kind of violent judge. You could either have the police or these guys do that. So I'm back to Carlton, right? So I'm back in town. I'm living at that apartment house after Howard lost it to the mob. And the mob again, good boy, took care of grandmas, and you're Italian, yes, you're Irish and German, but you're Italian boy, and we love you. You're always fixing our stuff for us, right? You're Mike's godson, so you're all good. So okay, they know me, I know them, we're buds, but I'm not part of their thing. I'm their electrician, I always do things for Mike, and for everybody else who's connected to Mike. And anyway, well, that's that story. So anyway, Carlton lives he owns a building near Canal and West Broadway. So I kind of saunter. It's been now a month. I kind of saunter over there, and Carlton's in there. And I said, "So how's it going, Carlton?" He goes, "I'm really glad you're back, and I won't ever involve you in anything like that again." I said, "Okay, no problem. You're my bud, So we go back to, me being his wingman and him going out. And because he was just a party animal, and he's the most fun to hang out with. And girls just love this guy. And so he would go home with whoever he thought was the best girl. And I would always go home with the most interesting girl, right? And really smart, very attractive, but the black swan of the rest of the swans, and that's the kind of girl I like. And so this one girl, we went back, and we didn't just jump in the bed because she was a little more, but she liked me, and we hung out, and I showed her a good time. And we started to, get intimate and but not, I really move slow into that. I'm really a cuddle bunny, and I'm really hold your hand and kissy face, and, I'm all of that. And, I ease into it because I find that that's much better. You have much better intimacy if you take it slow and rather than, go all crazy. And then you can really appreciate somebody. You can make them feel good. You can do all the things that I like to do with somebody, right? So this girl and I are, sparking and being really nice. And she, she kind of met Carlton, but really, So anyway, we're at where were we? We were at Dave's Diner on Canal Street, and it was late at night, and we were having fish sticks and egg cream, right? And we were gonna go out dancing, and it was getting late, and we hadn't eaten dinner, and we were gonna see if fish sticks and egg creams did it for us before we went out on the town, and if not, we were gonna go hit the bun shop in Chinatown. So anyway, we're in there, and Dave's was a pretty strange place because after 8 o'clock at night, I mean, this place was open 24/7 forever, right? But after 8 o'clock, the waitresses were like extraterrestrials. They had antennas, and they were like always on acid. It was like, and So if you want to really be somewhat entertained and have the best egg cream and fish sticks you ever could, you go to Dave's Corner on Canal and Broadway. Anyway, so we're in there, and who walks by but Carlton? And he's not with anyone, and he sees me, and he comes in, and he sits down, and he just turns on the charm with this young lady. And anyway, so after about an hour, he goes, well, what are you kids up to? And we said, well, we're just going to probably go home because by this time, whatever energy we thought we had to go dancing had been, thwarted by Carlton. And so we said, well, where are you staying? I said, at her apartment. I'm going back to hers. And, oh, where do you live? And so he kind of walks us way out of his way to go to her apartment because she lives in the West Village. He said, well, I'm going to go to, off to someplace in the West Village. So he finds out where she is. And, so now we weren't like dating. We were just being sweet on each other, right? And she didn't have a boyfriend. And she liked the fact that I was like taking my time and showing her a good time and having lots of fun with her and making her happy because she was kind of I don't want to say morose person, but, she was a literature major at NYU, so anyway, so I got lots of things to do. So, and I didn't see her like every day. Like I said, we weren't like dating. And so, a few days goes by and maybe a week goes by. And then I call her up and the few days went by and I'm, touch base. So how you doing? What are you up to? Oh, I'm busy. I'm writing a paper. I'm doing something. Okay, that's cool. You want me to hang out with you in the library? Because I used to love to do that. And she goes, no. What has happened is Carlton has just pounced on her, right? And he saw me with this, he realized that she was very attractive, right? And I was, and he knew me. He knew that I wasn't like him that just kind of made the deal like that I, was slow and easy. And, so within, I called her a couple of times. No, I'm busy. And then I said, well, I'm going to do this or that. And she was, no, I'm not doing. So I'm trying to say, she's just kind of like keeping me at bay. So anyway, I go to a party and there's Carlton with her, like on it, and not with three babes on each other, just her, right? And he's kissing her and he's being sweet to her. And anyway, and I can tell that she really, they are doing it. And anyway, she comes over to me, go, are you upset with me? I said, of course not. If you really like Carlton, yeah, he's my friend. I mean, everyone can't understand why I like him, but I understand why you like him. He's my friend, and I know that he's loads of fun, and I know he's got a lot of more money than I do, and I know can, yes, we can have fun. I can take you to lots of places where we can go in, but this guy's a zillionaire. I understand that, and I can see that you really like him, and the really more important thing is he really likes you. I've known him for years, and he doesn't. I've never seen him like anybody like he's liking you. So if you guys are enjoying, I want you to be happy. If he makes you happy, she goes, well, I see you more like my best friend and my brother. And I loved the little bit of intimacy we had, but it was just so sweet and so nice. And there's a part of me that really, really feels safe with that. But Carlton is the sex machine, and I've never had sex like that. I said, yes, I understand, and it's no problem. I still, you're like my sister and my best of friend, and Carl's my good. So if you two guys are happy with each other, I'm happy. So then we became the Three Musketeers. We did a lot of stuff together, and it was loads of fun. And he, like I said, he had property every which way. We had a really nice house out in the Hamptons. We went to the beach a lot. He had a place on, what is that island off of where all the gay people go in Long Island? Fire Island. And he had a place on Fire Island. And like I said, he had more money than God. So, so we had a lot of fun. We traveled around a bit, and we went to D.C. We all flew on his family's jet down to New Orleans for Mardi Gras. And so they were just, so they get married, right? And they have a baby. And, the kid's name is Chance, because it's just by chance that, anyway, so I'm like the godfather of Chance. I'm Carlton's best friend and his wife's best friend, and we make this special little unit together. But I have my own life. I'm doing other stuff. By this time I have another girlfriend, and so I'm not there doing their thing. We do stuff together. Somewhat, I'm as close as the other social member of their family as anybody else. There's nobody else in that unit. Anyway, by that time, I have my own place, and they know where it is. They come to my place for dinner and look at the paintings I'm doing and my potluck dinners and all of that. And so, I've, by this time, I had been at the hospital. My boss sent me off to study with all these alternative medicine people. I had lived with my sensei in Putney, Vermont, and he taught me Tai Chi, Qigong, and Jiu-Jitsu, right? And then I had this girlfriend who was, she was a martial artist. She could kill you 20 different ways. And she was this little thing, and she taught women how to protect themselves, right? And I had, and this is a little bit, we, was no longer working for Bob Goddard, who owned Pig Lights and Joshua Light Show, but I still did electric work for him. And I was still his buddy, and he had this building right on 16th Street in this where the meat market was. And for years, I lived in that building, and and I knew all the meat market guys because I fixed the refrigerators. And so they had these bars in the meat market that if you walk in with a butcher's coat on, you got free booze and all the steak and potatoes and whatever you want. I mean, the best steaks in New York City, even better than Peter Luger's, right? So my jiu-jitsu girlfriend used to love going in there. And one time and she loved to drink and loved to get buzzed. And so we were walking home and we got bugged, and she beat up 6 guys. And I think, they turned out all the lights, so I couldn't see what she did. But just by her, she was drunk out of her mind, and she beat the ever-living crap out of these guys. And the next morning, she woke up and her fists were all, bloodied up from beating the crap out of these guys. She goes, "What happened last night?" I said, "I think you killed 6 people." And she was standing in her underpants and brassiere, and she was quite the shapely girl. And she was wearing these leopard underpants and brassiere. And I looked at her, and I had this this is when I was doing cable TV. And we did a TV show where she beat guys up on television. It was called Cave Girls. And, and we advertised it, and we would have this line of guys out the door. And I had my lawyer sign a contract where these guys would sign up saying, if they got murdered or killed or broken and ended up, it was their problem. They could not sue it. They were totally signing everything away. And this guy, my lawyer, made it like ironclad. And she would just eat these. She was this little girl, like 5'4", weighed about 90 pounds. And most of it was in her hips and her breasts. And she just would take these guys apart. And the studio, we covered in wrestling mats against the wall and in the places that they would end up flying through the air and instead of smashing into the concrete wall. So no one really, they got really beat up, but no one ended up in the hospital. And no one really, she kind of pulled her punch. She didn't break any bones, but she made it look horrific. and it was one of the most popular. When we would do our must-see TV show on Thursday, which was 90 minutes, um, more people watched our show. And that's when that was called Potato Wolf. That was the name of our video show. We had 9 producers, and so we did a lot of different kinds of things. And but when we did the Thursday night show, it was her beating up guys. Coca Crystal, who was the biggest marijuana seller, and people. She had a pizza parlor. People would call up and order a certain type of pizza, and the guy would bicycle it to them, and it would be herb, right? And Coca was a great baker, and she would make all of these kind of things, edibles, and she would. It was like Julia Child with marijuana, right, and hashish. And I had another friend named so that was Coca Crystal, Annie Sprinkle, and she and I went to studied anthropology at NYU, and she was getting her PhD doing ethnography on sex workers. So we had the bake off of edibles. My girlfriend beating the crap out of guys, big fat guys mostly, who would want to like just jump on her body and rub her unbelievable body on them, but they would get they wouldn't even get close to her before she swung them through the air and sent them sailing, right? And she'd kick them and punch them and use them like a rag doll. And then Annie Sprinkle would have these girls on and give exhibitions on how to do cunnilingus and oral. Everything oral was their section. Everything oral. And I would have guys, my buddies, lining up to volunteer for that. And so that was quite a fun show to do. And so that was when that period was Carlton married my friend. And I'm not going to use her name. And so I was living at, it was her apartment, but it was our apartment because I mostly paid the rent because she had a lot of rent on her dojo. And and she wouldn't, when she was teaching women how to sell, she would just say, pay me whatever you can pay me, right? And a lot of those women couldn't pay, right? So anyway, we had a great time. That girl and I we just laughed the whole time through. Lots of sex, lots of laughs, lots of good times. And she was just, didn't have any demands except that I just be me. And we had this great friendship and, with benefits. Anyway, so one day, knock on the door, and there is this girl, and her arms in a cast. And Chance, who is now 3 years old, his leg is in a cast and his head is bandaged. And she's sobbing, and she goes, I don't know what Carlton has changed. And he beat us up, and I said, okay. Anyway, my girlfriend, I'm gonna kill him, and she would have, right? I said, no, I'm gonna go I'm gonna see about this. You stay with her. You protect her. I'll go take care of Carlton. So I was well trained. I had a girl who could kill you 20 different ways, and we used to spar. We would do. It's called push hands, right? When you practice martial arts without killing each other, right? And that was like she loved. We had a part of our apartment that again we had covered in wrestling matches. She wouldn't throw me across the room, but she would get me into holds and things, and instead of kicking each other and punching each other, we would do what is this thing called push hands. So, and that was we loved doing that, and sometimes we get a little beat up doing that, but nothing real. I mean, it was sparring. It's if you're a martial artist, yeah, you're gonna get a little sprain here, a little muscle ache over there, a little black and blue there, but it was never done in malice. It was done more in fun. It was more prelude to sex. Now, anyway, I won't go there with any other stories about that. But anyway, she loved that, and so And we were really good at like going from, doing push hands into having some really wrestling sex. So anyway, this was, most teenage boys' dream. And when she and I would be around town and we'd be in a store or something, old lady, I mean, it was unbelievable who would watch our show. These people, oh, I just love your show. These old grandmas would watch this, basically naked woman beat the crap out of big fat guys. And other women would tell us, and teenage boys was her biggest fans because, it was pretty exciting. They didn't want to beat her up, but they liked watching her next to nothing clad body, take guys out. So anyway, she was quite the popular girl whenever we walked through town because it was unbelievable how many millions of people watched that show every Thursday. So anyway, my friend with Chance shows up and, oh, Carlton, this is, and, my girlfriend's about to go kill Carlton. And I said, no, you stay here and protect her. That's the important thing. I'll go find Carlton. So I find Carlton and I go, I know he's going to be at one of 6 bars, and they're really dive bars. They're not like fancy cocktail bars. This is alcoholic drunk bars, right? Boozer bars, down in the Bowery and over on the dark side of Chinatown. So I go looking for him and I find him. I walk in and I just put my hand on his shoulders. He looks up at me and he's weeping. He goes, kill me. Oh, I don't know what. And what's happened is he is from this paranormal, some dark side of him. He was being Mr. Lovey-Dovey, and that dark paranormal side said, not anytime soon, buddy. And that devil came out of him, and that's what beat the crap out of his son and his wife, right? So I said, Carlton, come on out. We're going to go in the back. Kill me, I have to die. And basically, he's like, kill me. And I go up there, and back in the day, they used to make garbage cans because they had big rats out of like super duper steel. Like the garbage can, it's a 40-gallon garbage can, but the can just by itself weighed 30 pounds, right? So I walk out there with him and he's weeping and he's telling me, and then the evil, the guy who I heard at that house was coming out. I kill that car. Kill that boy. I'm gonna rip that bitch apart. And so I put my hand on the handle of that thing and I just pick it up like it weighed nothing. And I swung it around twice over my head and just smashed him, the top part of his body. And he went flying through the air and went into the side of the dumpster. And I went over and hit him a number of times with it. And my better self said, stop now. Don't do this anymore. And I looked at him, and he looked like he was dead. And the boy said, take an oath that you will never do this ever again. And I said, I swear I will never do this again. And then the boy said, it is done, it is fair, it is just. Throw him in the dumpster. And it was, half full of crappy food from the dive bar and vomit. And I just picked him up like he weighed nothing and threw him in there. And again, my police detective friend, who is now, or then was up and, he got a little higher, was now a lieutenant instead of just a detective, and he was at one police bar, and he knew Carlton because that family was super duper wealthy and powerful in New York, and he knew I was like his best friend, and he came and visited me and said, so the family just wants to make sure that you were the one who beat Carlton up. I said, is he alive? He goes, oh, yeah, he's alive. He's never going to be a model again, but He's alive, and he doesn't want to press any charges, and his family doesn't want it either. Because, he's going to leave New York, and you just take care of that girl and that child. And I said, okay. And he said, here's a number of a lawyer, and when everything's kind of settled and they feel all right, they want to make a settlement with her. And I said, okay. And that's how things go in New York, at least in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I don't know what they're doing now. Because I left New York in 88, never went back. I only was back once in 2011 for one of my goddaughters. And she found me. She goes, "You're a hard guy to find. You're not even on you're not on Facebook. You're not on any kind of social media at all." And I said, "Well, you found me." And she goes, "I'm getting married, and I want you to walk me down the aisle. And if you don't do it, I'm coming to get you." I said, "Okay. I'll be there." So, yeah, I think it's 1988 is when I left. I think it's time for me to visit New York and see what's going on. So I did. But I never saw Carlton again. And what happened was, so, I made sure she was okay. Our apartment was big enough for the four of us, my girlfriend, me, and my best of friend, and my godson. And in about 2 months, they were physically healed, and I got them a really good counselor, and I counseled them, and I took them on a couple of beach vacations with my girlfriend too, to be our guard. And then, I brought it to the lawyer, and they gave her an unbelievable, you know, settlement. And she too moved out of the country. I mean, I don't know where Carlton went, but she moved more than out of. She wanted to go to Mallorca, and so they bought her a house, gave her, a trust, and you know, I really, I mean, once she got there, and I did visit her once, and that was about it. But so that's what I took a vow never to be violent like that again. So I have been, when I was housing authority policeman, if you can believe that. But I never had a gun. I never wore the uniform. I did have my little badge around my neck on a little chain, and but in that there were a number of times where I used my jujitsu to get the physical. Um, and I did have a pair of handcuffs. I did have that. Right. That was like the most between my badge. I had a flashlight, but it was my electrician flash, so not a flashlight you beat somebody with, but a flashlight that you can see with. It was about that big, very bright. And so, and I did have a pair of handcuffs because sometimes I did need to put their hands. So I would, yes, use my jujitsu to, use geometry to put their arms behind their backs or put them on the ground and put my knee in their back. And now I can understand how police do that, but you don't need to do that for any longer than 20 seconds, not 9 minutes, and not on someone's neck. There's a point in the middle of your back that if you put your knee there, they can't move, period. And you can very easily get their hands behind their back and handcuff them. So that was it. But my partner was, the avenging angel, So anyway, so that is my little story about nonviolence, right? Because violence really does not fix anything. Now, being able to manipulate a person into not them being violent, well, that's all right. But I'm a bit old for that. So a jigsaw world order has taken control. But the problem is that it's always been this jigsaw world because it's always been the illusion of ego. And wasn't it honest, but that seems to be the big mystery for me. When wasn't it? Honestly, exactly. So my little study, as the scholar, is so this question has, I've been asking that question for a long time. What I realized that up until about 16,000 years ago, women ruled. Men were indisposable sperm donors. They weren't in charge. They were expendable. And for some reason, women gave up that position. They did it in kind of a, well, you think you can do better? Well, go ahead and try. And that's where we're in the position we're in right now. That's why men are mostly misogynistic and controlling and violent because they've never gotten over whatever that issue was. Duality, plurality of reality. Very good, Fish. You're getting better at this. Quote reality. Yep. AYO, New York City represents AM from 18 miles west of Charlotte. Yep. I listen to AM radio too. It's the only thing I get out in the deep green. And I get it from all over the planet. Let's see. Kyle, Penthouse best friend, Thomas Bubbett. Yep, was an associate. I let him go. Yep, exactly. Because his father was sheriff. Yep, exactly. Ugh. So I have worked and, I have a lot of police friends and I've counseled a lot of policemen and I've worked for the police, to read people and I don't call myself a profiler because that's a whole different thing, and I just read people. And so what I have realized is that the state violence of police, you have to see, it's only recent that we've had, municipal police. Before, police were owned by the rich. They still are. That's why the law is just us. It's just us. It's just for the rich, right? And that movie, Gangs of New York, is a very good movie. There's a scene where the rich Dutch guy comes in on the show to look at the five corners where all the Irish are, and they have this elevated sidewalk above the mud and glop of the Irish ghetto, right? And they get off at their, right at the steps that go up to this elevated walkway. And as they go up, there's a sign over this, and it says the liberal way, right? As they go up there, they see this Irish policeman, and he knows who the rich people are. Oh, good day, sir, blah, blah, blah. Sir, can I have, and they're all going, oh, it's so terrible, it's so crime ridden, it's so disgusting, blah, blah, because he goes, no, it's just, respect. And he goes, sir, do you have your watch? And the rich guy gives him this golden watch, and he goes, I'm just going to put it right here on this little post, and we're going to take the tour of the ghetto, right? And the wife goes, oh, but that's an expensive watch. Someone will steal it immediately. He goes, no, they won't, because I'm with you, and they respect me. Meaning, everyone knows if someone took that watch, they'll get murdered. And so that's the police, right? It represents the rich people. It protects the rich, and basically oppresses everybody else. So that's why I got to know police, because whenever I cruise into a new town, one of the first things I do is kind of hang out and start being nice to the police, read their palms, talk to them, be the intersayer to the people who are poor, so as to keep the lid on the bubbling pot of discontent. And so I've done that a lot because it protects the poor people. Because if the poor people ever step out of line, the retribution is 1,000 times worse than whatever little misdemeanor they might do. And so that is one of the things I do. And so when I worked for the, New York City Housing Authority, that was my gig. I didn't want to send anyone into the arms of the court. I always interceded to just mellow it out, you know. And so that's why my partner and I, we took, our authority was over 4, New York City high-rise ghettos, right? And there were about 2,000 people in those 4 buildings, right? And then there were other, but those were our responsibility. It was just 2 policemen for 4,000 people. It was, but I was the best of the nice cops, and she would murder you. I mean, she was, the avenging angel, and we were best of partners. And she didn't want to hurt people. She wasn't like, a sociopath, but she was trained. She was one of the first women to not only pass but be the top of her class as a ranger, an Army Ranger. She was the first woman to be a first Army Ranger, and she was the top of her class, right? And everyone in the Rangerness were like scared shitless of her, right? Like when we used to go to court, New York City cops could go in there with their weapons, right? They could have their gun. But because we were city housing authority, no, we didn't get to carry our gun in there. So I remember going to court, and I'm got a pair of shorts, a Hawaiian shirt, and flip flops, and my mirrored sunglasses, and I had my little, badge around my neck, my chain, and they all knew me, and so we go in there, and so we go through, where you have to turn in all your weapons if you're not a New York City policeman. And she had like 12 guns, 40 knives, every kind of weapon. She had like 50 pounds of weapons on that desk. And the guy was like, what? Everyone says she just kept pulling them out of her uniform. And she did that on purpose. I mean, she stuffed more weapons in her outfit than she normally had. She just wanted to make a point. And, because, normally, I'd say, why don't you leave all that? We're just going to court. She goes, you never know. So, anyway. So that's the story. Now, it's been 3 hours and 22 minutes and 22 seconds. So I'm going to read what you have to say, and then I'm going to say goodnight because I'm getting a little tired. What time is it anyway? It is 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay. I started at 10. Let's see. Fish. What did Fish say here? It's not even that simple. The prosecution stepped in and gonna suffer for it. Yeah, I mean, there's this thing called karma, technicalities, but it doesn't necessarily mean justice. Yep. Anti-fish. Hello. Divine fish. Hi. Right. So anyway. Okay, kids. I love you all. Good night. Sweet dreams. Anybody wants to get a hold of me, what is my the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Well, get a hold of me. Right? All those who want to talk to me, get a hold of me there. We communicate a little bit. I have my WhatsApp, and so we can communicate on that. If you give me your phone number, or we talk and I give you my phone number, you call me. We'll do something like that. So I love you all. My prayers are always with you. I pray, 20, 30 times a day, and I always have you in my heart when I pray. Remember, conscious intent I am. Conscious intent I am. Conscious intent I am. Om. Conscious awareness I am. Conscious awareness I am. Conscious awareness I am. Om. Love you all. Good night. Sweet, sweet dreams, sweet dreams. Do